Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's relaxing session. Before we get started, feel free to share your favorite Reddit story in the comments. And if you enjoy calm storytelling like this, consider subscribing. It's free and helps the channel grow. Now get comfortable and let's unwind together. My husband was texting his ex while I was pregnant, and I found out in the worst way. I never thought I would be the person writing something like this, but here I am, sitting in my car outside my house because I cannot bring myself to go inside yet. I am 30 years old and I gave birth to our first child 3 months ago. My husband Daniel is 32 and we have been together for almost 8 years, married for 5. When I was pregnant, I thought our biggest challenges would be money, sleep, and learning how to be parents. I was wrong. During my pregnancy, I had a rough time. I had morning sickness that lasted all day, anxiety about the baby, and a lot of emotional ups and downs. Daniel seemed supportive on the surface. He came to appointments when he could and told people he was excited to be a dad. But something always felt a little off. He was on his phone a lot more. He started taking it with him everywhere, including the bathroom and the shower. If I asked who he was texting, he would say work or one of his friends, and I tried to tell myself I was just hormonal. Daniel has an ex named Lauren who is 29. They dated seriously in their early 20s and broke up before I met him. He always described her as his first real love, but also said they were completely done and had not spoken in years. I never had a reason to doubt that. I am not the jealous type, and I believed marriage meant trust. About halfway through my pregnancy, I noticed her name pop up on his phone when he was scrolling through messages in front of me. He tilted the screen away quickly and said it was nothing. I asked him directly why his ex was texting him. He laughed and said she just congratulated him after seeing a post online about the pregnancy, and that was it. I wanted to believe him, so I let it go even though my stomach felt tight afterward. As my due date got closer, the distance between us grew. He stayed late at work more often and seemed distracted when he was home. I was exhausted and emotional, and I remember crying one night asking him if everything was okay between us. He hugged me and told me I was overthinking and that he loved me. I clung to that because I needed to. I went into labor early and it was scary. Daniel was there and held my hand and cried when our son was born. For a moment, I thought everything was fine and that I had imagined the cracks. Those first few weeks after the birth were chaos. No sleep, constant feedings, and trying to heal physically and emotionally. Daniel helped, but there was still that same feeling that part of him was somewhere else. One night, while I was feeding the baby, Daniel fell asleep on the couch. His phone buzzed, and I instinctively glanced at it, thinking it might be work or a family member. I saw Lauren's name again. My heart started racing. I know it was wrong, but I picked up his phone. I told myself I would just see if it was innocent so I could finally calm my mind. It was not innocent. There were weeks of messages. Some were casual, but many were emotional. He told her he missed talking to her and that becoming a father made him think about the past. She told him she wondered what their life would have been like if they had stayed together. There were messages from when I was heavily pregnant where he complained about stress at home and feeling disconnected. There were even a few that crossed into flirting, though I did not see anything explicitly sexual. Still, reading those words while holding our newborn felt like being punched in the chest. I woke him up shaking and confronted him. He tried to grab the phone from me and then just sat there, silent. Eventually he admitted they had reconnected a few months before after she messaged him out of the blue. He swore it was never physical and that he never intended to leave me. He said he was scared about becoming a dad and that talking to her made him feel understood. Hearing that broke something in me. I asked him why he did not talk to me instead. He said he did not want to stress me out while I was pregnant. That answer made me angry because I was already stressed, and now I knew he was sharing his fears with another woman instead of his wife. Since that night, things have been tense. We have not told anyone what happened. He apologized repeatedly and offered to cut contact with her. He showed me that he blocked her number and deleted the messages, but the images are burned into my mind. I keep replaying everything, wondering if there is more he did not tell me. I wonder if he would still be texting her if I had not found out. I wonder if my pregnancy and vulnerability made me easier to betray. I feel torn in 1,000 directions. Part of me wants to protect my family and try to rebuild trust. Another part of me feels deeply disrespected and hurt. I think about how alone I felt during pregnancy and how he chose to lean on his ex instead of me. I am also scared about the legal and financial reality of separation with a newborn. I do not even know what my rights would be or how custody would work if things went that way. Daniel keeps saying it was a mistake and that he wants to go to counseling. He says he loves me and our son and that he will do whatever it takes to fix this. I look at him and see the man I married, but also the man who lied to me during one of the most vulnerable times of my life. Right now, I am stuck between anger, sadness, and fear. I do not know if this counts as emotional cheating or if I am overreacting. I do not know how to move forward without constantly checking his phone or doubting his words. I also do not know how to make a decision that will affect my child's entire life. I am writing this because I need outside perspective from people who are not emotionally involved. I want to know what moving forward should actually look like. Is this something that can be worked through with honesty and therapy, or is this a sign of deeper issues that will only get worse? How do you rebuild trust after something like this, especially when it happened during pregnancy? And how do you balance your own self-respect with the desire to keep your family together? Right now, all I know is that the woman I was before finding those messages feels gone, and I am trying to figure out who I am supposed to be next. Update. My husband was texting his ex while I was pregnant, and I found out in the worst way. A lot has happened since I first wrote this, and I needed some time before I could even put the words together. After that night when I found the messages, I ended up sleeping in the guest room with the baby for almost a week. Daniel tried to act normal during the day, but at night he would hover outside the door asking if we could talk. I kept telling him I was too tired or not ready, because the truth was, I was scared of what I might hear and scared of what I might say. Eventually, we did talk because it was impossible not to. One evening, after putting the baby down, I told him we needed to sit at the kitchen table and be completely honest. I told him I already knew the basics and that if he lied again even once, I would be done. He looked terrified, and that was the first time I saw real fear in his eyes instead of just guilt. He admitted that the messages went further than what I originally saw, not physically, but emotionally. He said there were phone calls when I was asleep or napping during my pregnancy. Hearing that made my hands shake because I would be lying in bed, exhausted, growing his child while he was in another room talking to his ex about feelings. He insisted nothing sexual ever happened and that they never met in person, but I honestly do not know how much that detail matters anymore. I asked him why her, and not a friend or a therapist or me. He said he felt like she knew him before all the responsibilities and expectations. He said he was panicking about being a father and about losing his freedom, and that she represented a time when life felt simpler. That answer hurt more than anything, because it made me feel like I and our baby were the problem instead of the future we were building. After that conversation, I told him I needed space to think. I took the baby and went to stay with my sister Emily for a few days. Being there was both comforting and humiliating because I had to explain why I suddenly showed up with a newborn and red swollen eyes. I did not tell her every detail, but enough that she understood I was not just being dramatic. She was furious on my behalf and told me I deserved better and that pregnancy was not the time for betrayal in any form. While I was there, Daniel sent long messages apologizing and saying he scheduled an individual therapy appointment and couples counseling for when I was ready. He also offered full transparency with his phone, social media, and email. A part of me appreciated the effort, but another part of me resented that it took hurting me this deeply for him to take those steps. I also quietly consulted a lawyer while I was at my sister's house. I did not tell Daniel about it. I needed to understand what my options were if things fell apart. The lawyer explained custody basics, child support, and what separation might look like in our state. Hearing it laid out so calmly made everything feel very real and very heavy. I cried in my car afterward because suddenly this was not just about feelings, but about the rest of my life and my child's stability. When I went back home, things were tense, but calmer. Daniel was on his best behavior. He helped more with the baby cook dinners and kept his phone face up on the table like a silent promise. We started couples counseling, and those sessions have been brutal. Hearing him talk about his fears and mistakes in front of a third person made it harder for him to minimize what he did, but it also forced me to say out loud how alone and betrayed I felt. One of the hardest moments was when the counselor asked me what I needed to feel safe again, and I realized I did not have an answer. I do not know how to undo months of lying and secrecy. I do not know how to forget that while I was worried about my body, my health, and our baby, he was emotionally investing in someone else. Daniel keeps saying he will wait as long as it takes and that he understands if I cannot forgive him right now. Some days I look at him holding our son and I feel a flicker of hope. Other days I look at him and feel nothing but anger and sadness. I hate that this is my reality during what is supposed to be a joyful time. Right now I am taking things one day at a time. I have not made any final decisions. I am focusing on my baby and on getting through each day without completely falling apart. I am learning that forgiveness is not a switch you flip, and trust is not something you can rebuild just because someone says sorry. I do not know where this will end. I do know that I am trying to choose myself and my child instead of ignoring my pain to keep the peace. Whatever happens next will be based on actions over time, not promises made in fear. I wish I could say I feel stronger or clearer, but the truth is, I am still figuring it out and trying to accept that sometimes love and betrayal exist in the same place, and you have to decide what you can live with. Update. My husband was texting his ex while I was pregnant, and I found out in the worst way. This will probably be the last time I update, because things have reached a point where there is nothing left to analyze, and no more waiting to see how I feel. It took months to get here, and I wish I could say the ending was clear and empowering from the start, but it was slow and exhausting and full of second guessing. We stayed in counseling for a while longer after my last update. Daniel kept showing up and saying the right things. He stayed in individual therapy and followed through on the transparency he promised. I had access to his phone and accounts, and for a while that made me feel safer, but eventually I realized something uncomfortable. I did not want to be his warden. I did not want a marriage where peace depended on me checking messages or watching his behavior like a warning system. Even when he did nothing wrong, my body stayed tense. That feeling never really went away. What finally shifted things for me was not another argument or discovery. It was something much quieter. One afternoon, I was alone with the baby, and he was sleeping on my chest. I remember looking down at his face and feeling this overwhelming clarity that my job was to teach him what love and respect look like. And I realized I would never want him to accept the kind of relationship I was trying to force myself to accept. That thought sat with me for days and would not leave. Daniel noticed the distance growing again and asked me directly if I was done. I did not answer right away because I wanted to be honest instead of reactive. A few days later, I told him the truth. I told him that while I believed he was sorry and believed he did not physically cheat, I no longer trusted him in the way a marriage requires. I told him that the emotional bond he built with someone else during my pregnancy changed how I see him and how safe I feel with him. I told him I did not hate him, but I also did not see a future where I could fully let my guard down again. That conversation was one of the hardest things I have ever done. He cried and asked if there was anything he could still do. I told him that sometimes consequences are not about punishment, but about reality. I said I did not want our son growing up in a home where resentment lived quietly under the surface. I said I needed to choose honesty over familiarity, even if it hurt. We decided to separate shortly after that. It was not dramatic or explosive. It was deeply sad and very real. We spoke with lawyers and worked out a temporary custody arrangement that prioritizes stability for the baby. Daniel moved into an apartment nearby so he can still be an active father. We are being civil and respectful because our child deserves that, even though the marriage did not survive. Telling friends and family was strange. Some people were supportive without question. Others tried to convince me I was walking away too soon, or that all marriages go through rough patches. I listened politely, but I am done explaining my pain in ways that make others comfortable. I know what I lived through, and I know what it cost me emotionally. As for Daniel's ex, she has stayed blocked and out of our lives as far as I know. At this point, she is no longer the focus of my anger. The damage was not about her specifically, but about the choices my husband made when I needed him most. Letting go of that blame has actually helped me heal more than holding onto it ever did. I am tired, but I am also calmer than I have been in a long time. My life is different than I imagined, and that grief still comes in waves. But I no longer feel like I am shrinking myself to keep something together that was already cracked. I am learning how to be a single mother and how to rebuild my sense of self outside of being someone's wife. If there is one thing I want to say to anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, it is this. Trust your body and your instincts. Betrayal does not have to be physical to be real, and forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. Sometimes moving forward means choosing a harder path that gives you peace instead of choosing the familiar one that slowly takes it away. I do not know what the future holds, but I know I can look at myself in the mirror and know I honored my worth and protected my child the best way I knew how. Stories number 2. My mom said the wildest shit about my brother being an atheist last night. Now I'm scared of her. I never thought I would be writing something like this, but I can't get last night out of my head, and I don't know who else to talk to about it. I'm still shaking a little while typing this, which feels dramatic, but that's honestly where I'm at. I live at home with my mom Linda and my younger brother Eric. My dad, Thomas, passed away a few years ago, and since then, it's mostly been the three of us trying to function like a normal family. On the outside, we probably look fine. Suburban house, decent schools, church on Sundays, normal American family stuff. I always thought my mom was strict but loving, the kind of person who worries too much and prays even more. Eric is 16 and I'm 19. He's always been the quiet thinker type. He reads a lot, asks questions, and doesn't just accept things because someone older tells him to. Over the past year or so, he's been pulling away from church. He stopped volunteering, stopped singing along to hymns, and eventually told me privately that he doesn't believe in God anymore. I didn't freak out. I'm not super religious myself, more like going through the motions because it's easier at home. I told him it was okay to question things and that beliefs are personal. He asked me not to tell Mom, so I didn't. I figured if he ever told her, it should be on his own terms. I thought the worst case scenario would be yelling, crying, maybe grounding him or forcing him to go to church more. I never imagined what actually happened. Last night, we were having dinner together, just the three of us. It was one of those forced family dinners, where the TV is off and Mom insists we talk. Everything was normal at first. She talked about work, about how Karen from her office is getting divorced, about gas prices, about nothing important. Eric was quiet, poking at his food. I could tell he was nervous, but I assumed it was school stress or something. Then Mom asked him directly why he hasn't been taking communion lately. The way she asked wasn't casual. It was sharp, like she already knew something was wrong. Eric froze. I tried to jump in and change the subject, but she cut me off and told me to let him speak for himself. Eric took a breath and said, very calmly, that he doesn't believe anymore. He said he's an atheist. He didn't say it to be rude or edgy. He just said it like a fact about himself, like saying his favorite color changed. The silence after that felt heavy. Mom stared at him like he had just admitted to committing a crime. Her face changed in a way I've never seen before. It wasn't just anger. It was something colder. She started asking him where he got these ideas. She asked if someone online had brainwashed him. She asked if a teacher had poisoned his mind. Eric tried to explain that it was his own conclusion, that he had been thinking about it for years. That's when she lost it. She started talking about how atheists have no morals. She said people who don't believe in God are capable of anything. She said that without God, there's nothing stopping someone from hurting others. She said this while staring directly at Eric, like she was implying something dark about him personally. I told her to stop. I said she was being unfair and cruel. She snapped at me and said I was defending sin. That alone was shocking, because she's never talked to me like that before. Then, she said something that made my stomach drop. She said she didn't know if it was safe to have an atheist in the house. She said that God warns us about people who turn away from Him. She said sometimes parents have to make hard choices to protect their family. I asked her what that meant. She smiled, but it wasn't a normal smile. It was tight and unsettling. She said she would pray for guidance and that God would show her what needed to be done. Eric looked terrified. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. This wasn't the mom who used to kiss our scraped knees and make us grilled cheese when we were sad. This was someone else entirely. She went on about how faith is the only thing keeping society from collapsing. She talked about demons, about corruption, about how disbelief spreads like a disease. I kept waiting for her to calm down, to realize she was going too far, but she just kept escalating. At one point, she said that if Eric continued down this path, he might bring darkness into the home. She said she wouldn't allow our household to be spiritually contaminated. The words she used didn't even sound like her. They sounded rehearsed, like something she heard from a sermon or a religious podcast. Eric excused himself and went to his room. Mom didn't stop him. She just watched him go with that same unsettling calm. After he left, she turned to me and asked if I believed. I lied. I said yes, of course. I've never felt so afraid answering a simple question. She nodded like she already knew. She told me to pray for my brother. She told me not to let his ideas influence me. She told me God sometimes tests families by placing temptation close to them. I went to my room and locked the door. I could hear her walking around the house for hours after that, opening and closing doors, muttering prayers under her breath. I texted Eric to see if he was okay. He said he was scared and asked if she could kick him out. I didn't know what to say, because for the first time, I honestly didn't know what she was capable of. This morning, she acted normal. That almost made it worse. She made breakfast, asked if we wanted coffee, talked about errands. It was like last night never happened. Eric stayed in his room. I stayed quiet. I can't stop replaying her words in my head. The way she talked about safety, the way she talked about protection. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if this is something I should take seriously. I always thought extreme religious stuff was something that happened in other families, not mine. I'm scared for my brother, and I'm scared of my own mother in a way I never have been before. I don't know if I should talk to someone, if I should help Eric make a plan, or if this will blow over like a bad argument. All I know is that something shifted last night, and I don't feel safe pretending it didn't. Update. My mom said the wildest shit about my brother being an atheist last night. Now I'm scared of her. A lot has happened since I first wrote this, and honestly, I didn't know if I would ever come back to update, because things got intense in a way I wasn't prepared for. I read every comment people sent me, even the harsh ones, and I took the advice more seriously than I probably would have if things hadn't escalated so fast. The day after that dinner, my mom, Linda, started acting different toward Eric in subtle ways at first. She stopped calling him by his name and started calling him my son in this overly formal tone. She left religious pamphlets on his desk. She started playing sermons out loud in the living room at full volume. None of it was violent or directly threatening, but it felt like pressure, like she was trying to break him down. Eric stopped leaving his room unless he absolutely had to. I started sleeping with my phone on full volume in case he texted me in the middle of the night. That might sound dramatic, but the atmosphere in the house felt wrong. Quiet in a way that made your skin crawl. 3 nights after the original incident, things crossed another line. I woke up around 2 a.m. to voices. At first I thought I was dreaming, but then I realized my mom was talking loudly from the hallway. I cracked my door open and saw her standing outside Eric's room with a Bible in her hand. She wasn't yelling, but she was intense. She was saying things like God was giving him one last chance and that repentance could still save him. Eric was crying. I could hear it through the door. That was it for me. I stepped out and told her to stop. I told her she was terrifying him and that this wasn't okay. She turned on me instantly. Her face hardened and she asked me why I was interfering in God's work. I told her this wasn't God. This was her. I told her she needed to back away from his door. She stared at me for a long second, then said something that I still can't shake. She said parents who fail to correct their children answer for it spiritually. She said she would not be responsible for letting evil take root under her roof. I told Eric to grab his phone and shoes. I didn't even fully know what I was doing, but instinct kicked in. I told him we were leaving. Mom told us if we walked out, we were choosing the world over family. I didn't argue. I just grabbed Eric's wrist and we walked out of the house in the middle of the night. We sat in my car for about 10 minutes just breathing. Eric kept apologizing and saying this was his fault. I told him it wasn't. I drove us to my friend Jessica's place. I hadn't talked to her about any of this beforehand, but she opened the door, saw our faces, and didn't ask questions. She let us crash on her couch. The next morning, I called my Aunt Rebecca, my mom's sister. I told her everything. I expected denial or excuses, but instead, she went very quiet. She told me my mom had been getting deeper into extreme religious groups online over the past year. She said Linda had always been intense, but after my dad died, it got worse. She admitted the family had noticed, but didn't know how bad it was. That was both validating and horrifying. Rebecca came over to Jessica's place that afternoon and talked to Eric directly. She told him none of this was his fault. She said belief or non-belief doesn't make someone dangerous or evil. I watched my brother relax for the first time in days. My mom started blowing up my phone. At first, it was guilt messages about family and obedience. Then it turned into anger. She accused me of kidnapping my own brother. She said she would call the police. That scared me enough that I actually did call a legal aid hotline. They told me that since Eric is a minor, this could get complicated, but given the circumstances, documenting everything was important. Rebecca offered to have Eric stay with her temporarily. She has a stable home and kids of her own. Eric agreed immediately. I drove him there that night. Watching him unpack his bag in her guest room broke my heart and relieved me at the same time. I went back home alone to grab more of his things and some of mine. My mom was waiting. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She told me I was making a mistake. She said the world would chew us up without God's protection. She said one day I would regret choosing my brother over her. I told her I wasn't choosing sides. I told her I was choosing safety. She laughed at that like it was the most ridiculous thing she had ever heard. I moved out that night. I'm staying with Jessica for now and saving up to get my own place. I still talk to Eric every day. He's doing better, sleeping better, laughing again. Rebecca is helping him figure out school logistics and therapy options. I don't know what my relationship with my mom looks like going forward. Part of me misses her. Part of me is angry. A big part of me is just sad. I never thought fear would be the thing that broke our family apart. What I do know is that I don't regret protecting my brother. Whatever my mom believes, whatever she thinks God wants, no belief system justifies making your own child afraid to sleep in their room. I wish I could say things are resolved, but they're not. They're just safer than they were before. Final update. My mom said the wildest shit about my brother being an atheist last night. Now I'm scared of her. I waited to write this because I needed time to see how things actually settled instead of reacting, while everything was still raw. It's been a few months now, and while nothing feels normal, it finally feels stable enough to talk about without my hands shaking. Eric has been living with our Aunt Rebecca full time. That arrangement became permanent after my mom, Linda, refused to agree to any conditions that involved therapy, mediation, or backing off on religion. Rebecca tried multiple times to talk to her calmly. Each time ended the same way, with my mom insisting that Eric's presence was spiritually dangerous and that she would not compromise her faith for anyone, even her own child. There was a point where child services got involved, not because of physical abuse, but because of the recorded voicemails and texts my mom left. Rebecca encouraged us to save everything, and I'm grateful we did. Hearing those messages played back by someone else made it very clear that this wasn't just strict parenting or religious disagreement. It was obsession. The result was that Rebecca was granted temporary guardianship that later became long-term. My mom fought it at first and then suddenly stopped. She didn't show up to the final hearing. That hurt more than I expected, even knowing everything that had happened. I think part of me still hoped she would snap out of it and choose her kids over her beliefs. Eric is doing better than I ever thought he would. He's in therapy now. He's back to being sarcastic and curious and himself. He joined a debate club at school and actually enjoys learning again. The biggest change is that he sleeps through the night. That alone tells me we made the right call. As for me, I moved into a small apartment with Jessica. It's nothing fancy, but it's quiet and calm and safe. I'm working and going to school part-time. I didn't realize how much emotional weight I was carrying until it was gone. I'm also in therapy, trying to untangle the guilt, the grief, and the anger. Loving someone who scares you does something strange to your brain. I have very limited contact with my mom now. Short texts only. No visits. No phone calls. The last time I saw her in person was by accident at a grocery store. She looked the same, but also different, like her world had narrowed. She told me she was praying for me. I told her I hoped she was well. That was it. I don't know if I'll ever have a normal relationship with her again. I don't know if she'll ever see what she did as harmful. What I do know is that fear should never be the price of belief, and love should never come with threats disguised as faith. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that protecting someone doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks like packing a bag at 2 a.m. and walking away from the person who raised you. Sometimes it looks like choosing your brother's safety over your mother's approval. Our family didn't break because of atheism. It broke because control mattered more than compassion. I hate that this is our story, but I'm proud of how Eric and I survived it. We're not healed, but we're healing, and that's something I never thought I'd be able to say when all of this started. Stories number 3. My refusal to sign a marriage contract that takes part of my income. My name is Nathan, and I am 34 years old, living in Oregon. I work in tech and make good money. Not celebrity rich, but enough that I live comfortably and do not stress about bills. I grew up poor, like really poor, and everything I have now came from years of grinding, scholarships, side jobs, and taking risks that could have easily failed. I have been dating my girlfriend Melissa for 4 years. She is 32 and works in marketing. She makes decent money too, just not anywhere close to what I make. We met through mutual friends and hit it off fast. She is funny, social, and good at making people feel welcome. For a long time, things felt easy between us. About 6 months ago, I proposed. She cried, said yes, and for a while, everything felt like a movie. Families were happy, friends were excited, and we started talking about dates and venues. Then her parents got involved. Her dad, Frank, is a retired accountant. Her mom, Deborah, is very opinionated about everything. They invited us over for dinner and said they wanted to talk about practical things. I thought they meant wedding costs or guest lists. I was wrong. Frank brought out papers. Real papers, like from a lawyer. He said before Melissa gets married, they want her protected. He said since I make much more than her, it is only fair that she is guaranteed a percentage of my income in the marriage. Not just if we divorce, but while we are married too. I thought he was joking. He was not. He said the contract would say that a fixed percentage of my monthly income automatically becomes shared spousal income that she controls. Not both of us, just her. He said it was to make sure she always had independence and security. Melissa sat there quiet at first. Then she said she thought it was a good idea. She said she never wants to feel financially trapped. She said this would make her feel safe. I felt like someone punched me in the chest. I told them I am fine with sharing money as a couple. I already pay most of the rent. I cover vacations. I buy groceries more often. I am not stingy. But giving someone a guaranteed cut of my income that I do not control felt wrong. Frank said, "If you plan to be a husband, why does it matter?" That question made me angry. I said it matters because trust goes both ways. I said marriage is partnership, not a contract where one person gets power over the other's work. Melissa said I was overreacting. She said I act like she is trying to steal from me. She said she just wants to feel equal. I told her equality does not come from forcing money out of someone's hands. It comes from building together. We left that dinner tense. In the car, she said I embarrassed her. I said her parents ambushed me. She said they were just looking out for her. Over the next weeks, the contract became a constant shadow. Every time we talked about wedding plans, it came back to that paper. She said she would not get married without it. I said I would not get married with it. We started arguing about money more than ever. She said I do not understand what it is like to make less. I told her I spent most of my life making nothing. I told her I know what it is like to count coins. One night, I asked her honestly if she would still want me if I made half what I do now. She said yes, but then said the contract would matter even more then. That answer scared me. I talked to my friend Eric about it. He said it sounds like control, not security. My sister Hannah said I should not marry someone who starts with legal demands instead of trust. Melissa told her friends I was being selfish. One of them messaged me and said real men provide. That made me furious. I said real partners respect each other. Eventually, Melissa said she would compromise. She said instead of a big percentage, it could be smaller. I told her the problem is not the number. It is the idea that my income is treated like something she is entitled to by force, not by choice. She cried and said I do not care about her safety. I said I care, but I will not sign something that makes me feel like an employee in my own marriage. Last week, I told her clearly that I will not sign that contract. I said if that means no wedding, then so be it. She said she needs time to think. Now we barely talk. The ring is still on her finger, but it feels heavy instead of happy. I keep wondering if I am protecting myself or ruining my own future. I want a marriage where we share because we choose to, not because a lawyer told us to. I do not know if that makes me stubborn or just honest. All I know is that love should not start with a demand for a paycheck. Update: my refusal to sign a marriage contract that takes part of my income. A few days after I wrote everything out, Melissa asked if we could talk. I could hear how nervous she was just from the way she texted. We met at a coffee shop we used to go to when we first started dating. That already made the whole thing feel heavy. She started by saying she felt like everything had spiraled out of control. She said she never meant to make me feel like I was being used. She said her parents planted the idea in her head, but she admitted that once it was there, it made her feel safer. Not richer, safer. I told her I understand wanting safety. I grew up without it. But I also told her that forcing safety out of someone else's work feels wrong to me. I said I want to give, not be required. She said she feels like if she gives up this contract, she is giving up protection. She said she is scared that if something goes wrong, she will be stuck. I asked her if she thinks I am the kind of man who would trap her. She said no, but she said people change. That hurt more than I expected. I told her people do change, but trust is choosing someone anyway. I said a marriage that starts with fear might always be built on it. She asked if I would consider a different kind of agreement, not one that gives her a cut of my income during the marriage, but one that protects her if things end. Basically a prenup that focuses on divorce, not control during marriage. That was the first time I felt like we were actually listening to each other. I told her I am not against a fair prenup. I am against being treated like a paycheck. I said if we write something that protects both of us and respects what we each bring, I can talk about that. She cried. Not loud crying, just quiet shaking crying. She said she did not want to lose me over something that started as fear. We agreed to talk to a neutral lawyer together, not one picked by her parents. We said no promises, just information. The meeting was eye-opening. The lawyer explained that what her parents wanted was very unusual and would create serious power problems in a marriage. He said most agreements focus on what happens if a marriage ends, not on controlling income during it. Melissa looked shocked. I think she expected him to side with her parents. He did not. After that, she got angry at her dad. She said he scared her into thinking she needed protection from the man she was choosing to marry. Frank said he was just being realistic. She said he was being controlling. Things with her parents are tense now. They think I turned her against them. I did not. I just refused to play the villain in their story. Melissa and I are not magically fixed. But we are talking again. Real talking. She told me she feels embarrassed for letting fear and family pressure push her into something that hurt us. We are not planning a wedding right now. We decided to pause everything. No venues, no dates, just us figuring out if we can rebuild trust. Some days feel hopeful. We cook dinner together. We laugh like we used to. Other days feel fragile. Like one wrong sentence could break everything. I still love her. But I also see her differently now. I see how easily outside voices can shape her choices. She sees how fiercely I protect my independence. I do not know if we will end up married. But I know this. If we do, it will be because we chose each other freely, not because a contract forced us into roles we never agreed to play. Sometimes love is not about holding on tighter. Sometimes it is about stepping back and seeing if the other person is still standing with you when there is no rope pulling them close. Update 2. My refusal to sign a marriage contract that takes part of my income. It has been about 6 months since we paused everything, and life has felt strange in a quiet, heavy way. Not dramatic, not explosive, just uncertain. At first, Melissa and I tried to act normal. We still lived together. We still went to work, watched shows, cooked dinner, but there was always this invisible thing between us. Like both of us were afraid to lean too hard in case the other pulled away. She started therapy about 2 months after our first big talk. That was her idea, not mine. She said she wanted to understand why the idea of financial control felt like safety to her. I respected that. It told me she was taking this seriously, not just trying to win. I also started thinking a lot about myself, about why the idea of that contract hit me so hard. I realized it was not just about money. It was about my past, about being a kid who watched his mom cry over bills and promised herself she would never depend on anyone again. I think part of me is terrified of becoming someone's lifeline in a way that traps me. One night, we talked about our childhoods more honestly than ever. She told me her mom stayed in a bad marriage for years because she had no money of her own. She said she grew up watching her mom ask for permission to buy things. That made me understand her fear better. Not agree with her solution, but understand the fear. Over time, something else became clear. The contract was not the only issue. It was just the loudest one. We see safety differently. She sees it as guaranteed structure. I see it as chosen trust. 3 months ago, she came home from therapy and said she thinks she has been trying to protect herself from pain by controlling the future. She said that is not how love works. She said love always has risk. That was a big moment. We talked again about what a fair future might look like, not legally, just emotionally. We talked about shared accounts, separate accounts, goals, boundaries. For the first time, it felt like two adults planning together, not two sides fighting. Then something unexpected happened. Her job cut hours, not just hers, a lot of people's. Suddenly, she was making much less. I watched her struggle with that, not just financially, but emotionally. She hated feeling dependent on me for more things. One night she said, "I don't want your money to be my safety net. I want my own." That told me how far she had come. I supported her while she looked for better work. But I was careful not to take control. I asked what she needed instead of assuming. Sometimes she needed help. Sometimes she needed space to handle it herself. About a month ago, she got a new job that actually pays better than her old one. She was proud. I was proud of her. I think that changed something in how she sees herself. Last week, she brought up the contract again. My stomach dropped. But this time she said, "I don't want it anymore." She said she does not want a marriage that starts with fear of each other. She said she wants to build something together, even if it is scary. I told her that means a lot. But I also need time. Because even though she changed her mind, what happened before still happened. It still showed me how differently we think under pressure. We are not engaged right now. The ring is in a drawer. Not thrown away, not worn, just waiting. Some days, I think we will find our way back to each other fully. Other days, I think love might not be enough if two people need safety in opposite ways. But what I know for sure is this. Whatever happens, it will be because we chose it without fear forcing our hands. Update. My refusal to sign a marriage contract that takes part of my income. It has been almost a year since everything first blew up, and the shape of my life looks very different now than I expected back then. Melissa and I did not rush back into being engaged. We stayed together, but slowly, carefully, like people learning how to walk again after a bad fall. Some days felt normal and warm. Other days felt distant and fragile. The biggest change was how we talked to each other. We stopped trying to win arguments and started trying to understand why the other person was scared, because that is what it really was on both sides. Fear. Her therapy helped her a lot. She became more aware of how deeply her childhood shaped her need for financial control. She stopped talking about money like a shield and started talking about it like a tool. I also changed. I realized that I use independence as armor. I keep my doors open, but I also keep my walls high. Learning that about myself was uncomfortable. About 3 months ago, something small but important happened. We were planning a weekend trip. She offered to pay for the hotel. I instinctively said no, like I always do. She looked at me and said, "Let me be your partner, not your guest." That hit me hard. I realized I was so focused on not being used that I sometimes did not let myself be supported. After that, we started practicing something new. Taking turns. Not calculating every dollar, not keeping score, but being intentional. Sometimes she pays. Sometimes I pay. Sometimes we split. It sounds simple, but it changed how equal things felt. Then came the real test. My company went through layoffs. I was not laid off, but I lost a big bonus I had been counting on. For the first time in our relationship, I felt financially uncertain. I did not hide it from her. I told her I was scared. She did not try to control anything. She did not ask for guarantees. She just said, "We'll figure it out." And she meant we, not you. She picked up extra freelance work, not because I asked, but because she wanted to help. She did not hold it over me. She did not change how she treated me. She just showed up. That was the moment I knew something real had changed. A few weeks later, she told me she thinks she is finally ready to be married for the right reasons, not because she needs protection, but because she wants partnership. She said she does not need a contract to feel safe anymore. She needs trust, communication, and the ability to walk away if things ever become wrong, not money chains. I told her I am not afraid of legal agreements. I am afraid of agreements that replace trust. I told her if we ever sign anything, it should protect both of us, not control either of us. We talked to a lawyer again. This time, not out of fear, but out of responsibility. We drafted a simple, fair prenup that only talks about what happens if we separate, and even that was built together, not forced by anyone else. No one gets control of the other's income. We share what we choose to share. We protect what we need to protect. We respect each other's work. Last week, I proposed again, not with a big crowd or a camera, just us, walking by the river where we had our first real date. She cried again, but this time it felt lighter, like something heavy had finally been put down. Her parents were not thrilled. They still think she should be secured. But she told them she is not marrying my money. She is marrying me. We are planning a small wedding now. No rush, no pressure, just something that feels honest. I know now that love is not about avoiding fear. It is about facing it together and deciding not to let it run your life. I am not scared of marriage anymore. I am scared of losing honesty. As long as we keep that, I think we will be okay. Stories number 4. My in-laws want to take over my baby and my life, and I don't know how to stop it. I am writing this because I feel like I am going to explode if I keep all of this inside. I am a 29-year-old woman living in Ohio, and I gave birth to my first baby 8 months ago. My daughter Lily is healthy, curious, loud, and the absolute center of my world. I am married to my husband Andrew, who is 32, and we have been together for 6 years, married for 3. Before the baby, I thought our biggest problems were small things like whose turn it was to do dishes or how much time he spent on his phone. I had no idea how much having a child would change the power dynamics in our family, especially when it came to his parents. Andrew's parents are Mark and Susan. They live about 20 minutes away in a big house they bought years ago when Andrew and his younger sister Rachel were kids. Susan has always been intense, but I thought she was just one of those overbearing moms who means well. Mark is quieter, but backs her up on everything. During my pregnancy, Susan was constantly inserting herself. She wanted to be in the delivery room even though I was clear I only wanted Andrew. She argued that she had given birth twice and knew what was best. She tried to choose Lily's name and cried when we didn't use her suggestion. She showed up to doctor appointments I never invited her to because Andrew told her our schedule thinking it was harmless. When Lily was born, things escalated fast. Susan came to the hospital the same day, even though we asked for a day to ourselves. She took Lily out of my arms within minutes and kept saying my baby, like she was joking, but it didn't feel like a joke. I was exhausted, sore, and emotional, and I remember crying in the bathroom because I felt invisible. Andrew told me I was overreacting and that his mom was just excited. That phrase, just excited, has become a knife in my chest since then. Once we brought Lily home, Susan wanted to come over every day. If I said no, she would still come and sit in the driveway and text Andrew saying she was worried about the baby. She criticized everything I did. How I fed Lily, how I held her, how I dressed her. She told me my breast milk probably wasn't enough and tried to push formula even though Lily was gaining weight fine. Mark would stand there nodding and telling Andrew that Susan had a point and that new moms often don't know what they're doing. The biggest issue started when Susan began talking about us moving in with them. At first, it sounded like a suggestion. She said it would help us save money and that she could help with childcare so I could rest. I work from home part-time and I never asked for this. We are not struggling financially. We rent a small but comfortable house and we were happy there. I told her politely that I appreciated the offer, but we wanted to raise Lily in our own space. She didn't accept that. She kept bringing it up at every visit. She told Andrew that I was selfish for keeping Lily away from family support. Then, she started acting like Lily already belonged to her. She bought a crib for her house without asking. She set up a nursery and posted pictures online, calling it Grandma's room for my baby. She told her friends she would be watching Lily full time once we moved in. When I confronted her, she laughed and said I was being sensitive and that of course she knew best because she had raised children already. Andrew started to change too. He began repeating his parents' words. He told me moving in would be temporary. He said his mom could help more than I could because she had experience. He said maybe I should be grateful someone wanted to help instead of acting territorial. That word territorial hurt more than I can explain. I am Lily's mother. Wanting to raise my own child does not make me territorial. Things came to a head 2 months ago. Susan came over while I was putting Lily down for a nap. She took her out of the crib and woke her up because she wanted to hold her. Lily screamed, and I asked Susan to give her back. Susan refused and said Lily needed to get used to other people. I reached for my daughter, and Susan stepped back. Mark stood in the doorway and told me to calm down. I was shaking. I told him to leave. Susan said she wouldn't leave without Lily because she was worried about my emotional state. That is when I realized how dangerous this had become. Andrew came home to me, locked in the bedroom, holding Lily and crying. His parents were in the living room, telling him I was unstable. Andrew asked me to open the door and talk. I asked him if he believed them. He didn't answer right away. That silence still echoes in my head. Eventually, he asked his parents to leave, but later he told me I embarrassed him and that his mom was only trying to help. Since then, Susan has been pushing even harder. She texts Andrew constantly about my mental health. She suggests I have postpartum depression even though my doctor says I am fine. She tells him Lily would be safer in her care. She talks about grandparents' rights like it's a casual conversation. I started keeping records of everything. Text messages, voicemails, times they show up unannounced. I never thought I would need to do that against family. I finally told Andrew I will not move in with his parents, and I will not allow Susan to take over raising our child. I told him I need boundaries and therapy, and for him to choose our family over his parents. He told me I am asking him to abandon his family. I told him I am his family now, and so is Lily. He said I was giving him an ultimatum. Maybe I was. Right now, we are living in the same house, but barely speaking. Susan still shows up, but I don't let her in. She cries to Andrew that I am keeping her grandchild from her. Mark called me cold and ungrateful. Rachel texted me saying, I am tearing the family apart. I feel like I am drowning and being painted as the villain for wanting a normal life with my baby. I don't know what to do next. I am scared of how far Susan might go, and I am even more scared that my husband might let her. I love Andrew, but I will not hand my daughter over to anyone. I just want to be her mom, without fighting an entire family to do it. Update. My in-laws want to take over my baby and my life, and I don't know how to stop it. A lot has happened since I last wrote, and honestly, I didn't expect things to move this fast or get this ugly. Writing everything out helped me see how bad the situation really was, and it pushed me to stop waiting for Andrew to magically wake up and protect me and Lily. I realized that hoping someone will change without consequences just keeps you stuck. A few days after I wrote the original post, Susan showed up again, unannounced. This time, I didn't even open the door. I was feeding Lily, and I could see her through the window pacing on the porch. She kept knocking harder and harder, and then she started crying loudly like she wanted the neighbors to hear. Andrew was at work, and she kept texting him, saying I was refusing to let her see her grandchild, and that she was worried about Lily's safety. I have never felt so angry and violated in my life. I called Andrew and told him if he didn't handle this immediately, I would call the police. That finally made him tell his mom to leave. When Andrew got home that night, we had the worst fight of our marriage. I told him I felt like he had chosen his parents over me over and over again. I told him about the fear I felt when Susan wouldn't give Lily back, and when she talked about my mental health like it was a weapon. He said he didn't realize how scared I was, but then followed it up by saying his mom would never actually hurt Lily. I snapped and told him intent doesn't matter when the behavior is harmful. I told him I had started documenting everything, and that if he didn't believe me, I would show him the messages where Susan talked about Lily being better off with her. That was the first time Andrew looked genuinely shaken. He read through the texts and listened to the voicemails. He didn't say much, but he admitted some of it made him uncomfortable. I told him uncomfortable wasn't enough anymore. I told him I had spoken to a family law attorney for a consultation. I didn't hire one yet, but I needed to know my rights as a mother. When I said that, Andrew got defensive and asked if I was planning to divorce him. I told him I was planning to protect our daughter no matter what that meant. 2 days later, Susan crossed a line I will never forget. She went to Andrew's workplace. She told his boss she was concerned about a domestic situation at home and that I was unstable. His boss pulled Andrew aside and asked if everything was okay. Andrew was humiliated. He came home furious, but not at me. For the first time, he was angry at his mother. He called her and told her she was out of control and that she could not contact his workplace again. Susan cried and said she was only trying to help and that I was manipulating him. That night, Andrew agreed to couples counseling. I didn't celebrate because I knew words were easy. What mattered was action. Our first session was brutal but validating. The therapist pointed out how enmeshed Andrew was with his parents and how Susan's behavior was not normal or healthy. Hearing a neutral professional say that changed something. Andrew looked like someone had knocked the wind out of him. We set boundaries together in therapy. No unannounced visits. No undermining me as a mother. No talking about my mental health unless it was invited. Andrew sent the message to his parents himself. Susan did not take it well. She accused me of poisoning him against her. Mark sent a long message about how families should stick together and how grandparents have rights. That message pushed me to make another legal call. The attorney confirmed that grandparents' rights are very limited in our state, especially when both parents are married and there is no abuse or neglect. That knowledge gave me some peace, but also made me realize Susan was trying to scare us into compliance. Since the boundaries were set, Susan has gone silent. That silence feels ominous. Rachel unfriended me on social media. Mark stopped speaking to Andrew altogether. Andrew is grieving the image he had of his parents, and I feel for him, but I am also exhausted. I am still the one who flinches when the doorbell rings. I am still the one triple checking the locks. The hardest part is that trust with Andrew is damaged. He is trying now. He really is. He comes to therapy. He backs me up when his parents push. He apologized for not protecting me sooner. But part of me is still angry that it took things getting this bad. I don't know how long it will take for that wound to heal or if it fully will. For now, Lily is happy and safe. She laughs easily and reaches for me when she's scared. That reminds me why I'm doing all of this. I don't regret standing my ground, even though it cost me peace and relationships. I am still scared, but I finally feel like I am not alone in this fight anymore. I don't know what the future looks like with my marriage or my in-laws, but I know one thing for sure. No one gets to take my child or my voice ever again. Update. My in-laws want to take over my baby and my life, and I don't know how to stop it. I waited to write this because I needed to be sure I wasn't reacting emotionally or jumping to conclusions. I also needed to see if the changes Andrew promised were real or just another cycle of calm before things exploded again. I wish I could say everything resolved neatly, but real life doesn't work like that. About 3 weeks after the last update, Andrew and I were still in counseling, and things between us were calmer but fragile. He was trying to show up more. He took over night feedings on weekends. He stopped sharing information with his parents. He didn't answer his mom's calls and only responded to texts when absolutely necessary. I could see the effort, and I acknowledged it, but I was still guarded. Trust doesn't come back just because someone says sorry. Then Susan broke the silence. She sent Andrew a long email instead of a text. It was written like a confession mixed with an accusation. She said she felt pushed out, replaced, and disrespected. She said I had changed Andrew and turned him against his family. She said she was terrified Lily would grow up not knowing her grandparents and that this fear was driving her behavior. She did not apologize. not once. She ended the email by saying she was willing to forgive me if I admitted I was wrong and let her be more involved again. Andrew showed me the email immediately. That was new. Before, he would have tried to soften it or shield me from it. This time, he said reading it made him realize his mother was still not accepting boundaries. He replied briefly telling her that any relationship going forward depended on respect for us as parents and that guilt and manipulation would not be tolerated. Susan responded by saying she needed space to heal. That space has turned into complete no contact on her end. A week later, something happened that made everything crystal clear. Andrew's Aunt Linda, whom I had always been friendly with, reached out to me directly. She said Susan had been telling extended family that I was mentally unstable and keeping Lily away out of spite. She said Susan claimed Andrew was being controlled and that a divorce was coming. Linda wanted to hear my side because the story didn't sit right with her. I sent Linda screenshots of messages and explained calmly what had actually happened. Linda apologized to me and said she believed me. She also said Susan had a history of boundary issues that the family often ignored to keep the peace. That conversation hit Andrew hard. Hearing that this wasn't just a me problem, but a long-standing pattern shook him deeply. He realized he had spent his whole life managing his mother's emotions instead of questioning her behavior. In therapy, he admitted he was afraid of her reactions and had learned early on that it was easier to placate her than confront her. That realization didn't erase the past, but it explained a lot. The real turning point came when Andrew suggested something I never expected. He said he thought it would be best if we took a break from his parents entirely for a while. Not a punishment, but a reset. He said Lily deserved peace and stability, and so did I. He said he needed time to figure out who he was outside of being his mother's son. Hearing that felt like finally being able to breathe after holding my breath for months. We informed his parents through a short message that we would be stepping back from contact for the foreseeable future and would reach out when and if we were ready. Susan did not respond. Mark sent a single sentence saying he hoped Andrew wouldn't regret this. That was it. Life since then has been quieter. Not perfect, but quieter. I no longer feel like I'm constantly on edge. Lily is thriving. She started crawling and says something that sounds like mama. Andrew and I are rebuilding slowly. Some days are good and some days are heavy. I still struggle with resentment and he struggles with guilt, but we are talking honestly now instead of dancing around the truth. I don't know what will happen with my in-laws long term. I am open to reconciliation if real accountability and change ever happen, but I am no longer willing to sacrifice my mental health or my child's well-being for the sake of appearances. If that means Lily grows up with limited contact with her grandparents, then so be it. What I've learned through all of this is that becoming a parent changes your priorities in ways you don't fully understand until you're there. I used to think being agreeable kept the peace. Now I know it often just invites more harm. Protecting my child also meant learning to protect myself and demanding that my partner stand beside me, not between me and his parents. Stories number 5. My boyfriend is mad I will not quit my job to move with him for his dream opportunity. I never thought I would be the person writing one of these posts, but here I am because I honestly do not know if I am being unreasonable or if I am just finally standing up for myself. I am 29 and I work as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction firm in North Carolina. It is not a flashy job, but it is stable, it pays well, and I worked really hard to get here. I started as an admin assistant right after college, took night classes to get certified, and slowly worked my way up. I like my coworkers, my boss trusts me, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I am not one emergency away from losing everything. My boyfriend Tyler is 31. We have been together for a little over 3 years and living together for almost 2. When we met, he was working freelance in marketing and talking nonstop about his big dream. He has always wanted to work in the entertainment space, specifically sports media. I knew that from the start. I supported him through short-term contracts, dry months, and plenty of late-night venting sessions when things did not pan out. About 2 months ago, Tyler came home glowing. He told me he had been offered what he called a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A small startup sports media company in California wanted him to come on board as a content lead. It was not a huge name company. They did not offer relocation assistance. The pay was lower than what he averages now, at least at first, but he kept saying it would open doors and that sacrifices had to be made for dreams. I was genuinely happy for him. I hugged him, told him I was proud, and listened while he talked for over an hour about where this could lead. Then, he said something that made my stomach drop. He said we would need to start planning our move soon, because he wanted to give his notice within the month. I asked what he meant by we. Tyler looked at me like it was obvious. He said of course I would move with him. He said long distance would never work, and that couples support each other. I asked what about my job? He said I could quit and find something out there. He said construction companies exist everywhere, and I could probably get hired quickly. I tried to stay calm, but I told him I could not just quit my job on a maybe. I reminded him that his offer was not guaranteed long term, and that California is expensive. I asked if we could talk about timing, maybe him going first, and us seeing how stable it was. His mood shifted instantly. He said I was being negative. He said I always talk about stability and safety instead of believing in him. He accused me of treating his dream like a hobby. That hurt because I have supported him financially more than once when work was slow for him. Over the next few days, this turned into a full-blown argument. Tyler kept framing it like I was choosing my job over him. He said if I loved him, I would take the risk. He brought up all the times he compromised for me, like moving closer to my office when we first moved in together. He said this was his turn. I tried to explain my side again and again. I told him I am not against him taking the job. I just cannot uproot my entire career without a solid plan. My job is not just a paycheck to me. It represents years of effort in finally feeling secure. If I quit, I would lose seniority, benefits, and a path to promotion that my boss has already discussed with me. At one point, Tyler told me I was being selfish and short-sighted. He said people who succeed do not cling to comfort. That comment stuck with me in a bad way. It made me feel like he sees my career as something small or replaceable. Things got worse when he started involving other people. His friend Mark told him that women who do not support their partner's dreams end up alone. Tyler repeated that to me during an argument. I was shocked and honestly angry. I told him my support does not mean sacrificing my entire future without discussion. Last week, Tyler said something that really crossed a line for me. He said if I do not move with him, he will assume I am not serious about our relationship. He said he does not want to be with someone who prioritizes a job over love. That felt like an ultimatum, even though he insists it is not. Since then, our apartment has felt tense and quiet. We barely talk unless it is about logistics. He has already started packing some things and researching apartments in California, assuming I will come around. I feel like my feelings are being dismissed entirely. I have also started thinking about the legal and financial side of this. We are not married, but we share a lease, utilities, and some furniture we bought together. If he leaves and I stay, I will be stuck covering more expenses. If I leave, I will burn a professional bridge I may never get back. I keep asking myself if I am being too rigid. I love Tyler. I believe in him. I just do not believe that love should require me to erase everything I have built. I would never ask him to quit his job for my career without a serious plan and mutual agreement. The hardest part is that this has changed how I see him. Instead of seeing a partner, I see someone who expects me to fall in line because his dream matters more. He says it is temporary, but he cannot give me a timeline or any guarantees. Right now, he is expecting an answer by the end of the month. I feel pressured, anxious, and honestly hurt that after 3 years together, my need for stability is being treated like a flaw. I do not know what to do next. I do not know if standing my ground means I am losing him, or if giving in means I am losing myself. I never imagined that supporting someone could turn into this kind of conflict. Update. My boyfriend is mad I will not quit my job to move with him for his dream opportunity. A lot has happened since I last posted, and I needed some time before writing this because everything felt overwhelming all at once. After I wrote the original post, Tyler and I had a long talk that started calm but slowly went downhill. I told him clearly that I was not trying to stop him from taking the job. I said I wanted him to go if that is what he truly wanted, but I could not quit my job and move without a solid plan, savings, or at least some stability on his end. I thought maybe saying it plainly would finally get through to him. Instead, he got very quiet, which is usually a bad sign. He said he felt betrayed and said he had already told the company he would be relocating with his partner. That was the first time I heard that, and it shocked me. I asked why he would say that without talking to me first. He said he assumed I would support him because that is what couples do. That turned into another argument. I told him assuming something that big about my life without asking me was not fair. He said I was focusing on the wrong thing and that this opportunity was bigger than both of us. He kept repeating that phrase, bigger than both of us, and each time it felt like he was slowly pushing me out of the picture. A few days later, I found out he had already signed a short-term lease in California with a friend of his. He did not tell me directly. I found out because I saw an email confirmation pop up on his laptop when he asked me to grab it for him. When I confronted him, he said he did not want to deal with another argument and figured I would come around once things were in motion. That was the moment something clicked for me. It was not just about the move anymore. It was about respect. I told him that making major life decisions that affect both of us without my input was not okay. He said I was making him feel guilty for chasing his dream. I said I was reacting to being sidelined. Things escalated quickly after that. He accused me of trying to control him by refusing to move. I told him I never asked him to stay. I just asked to keep my own career intact. At one point, he said if roles were reversed, he would move for me without hesitation. I reminded him that when I accepted my current position, I did not expect him to quit his work and follow me blindly. The tension became unbearable. We were sleeping in the same bed, but felt like strangers. Conversations were short and clipped. He started staying out late with friends, and when he was home, he acted like I was already half gone. Last weekend, we sat down to talk about practical things like the lease. That conversation ended up being the most painful one yet. He said if I was not moving, then it did not make sense to keep the apartment together. He suggested I either take over the lease fully or move out so he could sublet his half. It felt cold and transactional, especially after everything we have been through. I spent that night at my sister's place. Being away from him gave me space to think more clearly than I have in months. I realized how anxious I had been trying to convince him that my job mattered, that I mattered. I should not have to argue that hard to be seen as an equal partner. When I came back, I told him my decision. I said I was not moving. I said he should take the job and go, but I would be staying. I also said we needed to seriously think about whether this relationship could survive if he sees compromise as betrayal. He did not yell. He did not argue. He just looked defeated and said he did not expect this from me. That sentence hurt more than any insult. It made me feel like he had a version of me in his head that existed only to support him, not to have my own needs. We have since agreed that he will move out at the end of the month. We are working through the lease with the landlord, and it looks like I will be able to keep the apartment if I cover the full rent. It will be tight financially, but manageable. I would rather budget carefully than gamble my entire future. Emotionally, I am still processing everything. I miss the version of us that felt like a team. At the same time, I feel a strange sense of relief. I no longer feel like I am constantly defending my right to stability. Tyler leaves in 2 weeks. We are being polite, but distant. I do not know what will happen between us long term. Part of me hopes time and distance will bring clarity. Another part of me is starting to accept that love is not enough when values do not align. I am sad, but I am not ashamed of my choice anymore. I did not choose my job over him. I chose not to disappear for someone else's dream. Final update. My boyfriend is mad I will not quit my job to move with him for his dream opportunity. Tyler left 3 weeks ago, and I waited to write this because I needed to actually live in the aftermath before I could understand how I felt about it. The last days before he moved were awkward in a quiet, heavy way. We were civil, almost polite, like coworkers wrapping up a project instead of two people who once talked about a future together. He packed his things slowly, dragging it out, and I think part of him expected me to change my mind at the last minute. I did not. On his last night, we sat on the couch and talked longer than we had in weeks. He said he was scared and excited and wished things had gone differently. I told him I wished that too, but wishing does not fix fundamental problems. He asked if I thought this was the end. I said I did not know, but I knew I could not follow him just to avoid losing him. The morning he left, I helped him load the car. We hugged, and it was emotional, but there was also a strange sense of finality. When he drove away, I cried harder than I expected, but underneath the sadness was relief. The constant tension was gone. The first week alone was rough. The apartment felt too quiet. I questioned myself constantly, especially at night. I wondered if I had been too stubborn or too cautious. But then, real life started to settle in. I went to work without panic. I paid bills without stressing about whether a startup across the country would still exist in 6 months. I slept better. Tyler and I tried to stay in touch at first. Texts turned into phone calls, and phone calls turned into arguments. He was struggling more than he let on before he left. The job was demanding, the pay was lower than expected, and the company culture was chaotic. I listened and supported him, but I noticed something important. Even from far away, he still framed things like I was supposed to fix them emotionally while putting my own life on pause. About a week ago, we had a long call that changed everything. He said he felt like he had lost me because I did not believe in him enough. I told him that hurt, because I believed in him as a person, just not in sacrificing myself for an unstable situation. I told him honestly that I felt like my role in his life had become conditional on how much I was willing to give up. There was a long silence, and then he said something that made things very clear. He said maybe he needed someone who was more flexible and less tied down. For the first time, that sentence did not break me. It clarified things. We decided to stop talking for now. Not dramatically, not angrily, just a clean break to give each other space. Since then, I have felt lighter than I expected. Sad, yes, but also grounded. Work has been going well. My boss officially offered me a lead role on a new project next quarter, something that would not have happened if I had left. I am slowly rebuilding my savings after taking over the full rent, and I am managing. Friends have stepped up in ways I did not realize they would. Looking back, I see how much I minimized myself to keep the peace. I see how often compromise only went one direction. This situation forced me to choose. And while it hurt, it also showed me what kind of partnership I actually want. One where dreams are shared, not ranked. I do not regret my decision anymore. I loved Tyler, and part of me probably always will. But love should not require shrinking yourself or living in constant fear of being left behind. I stayed, I chose my stability, and I am okay with that. For anyone reading this who feels stuck between supporting someone else and protecting their own future, I learned something important. Standing your ground does not mean you lack love. Sometimes it just means you finally have respect for yourself. Stories number 6. My girlfriend was spitting in my food and acted like it was nothing when I confronted her. I never thought I would be writing something this humiliating or confusing, but I need to get it out because I feel like I am losing my sense of what is normal. I am 27 years old, and I have been dating my girlfriend Megan, who is 26, for a little over 2 years. We live together in a small apartment, and until recently, I would have told anyone we had a solid relationship with normal issues, but nothing alarming. I work long hours, and Megan works from home, so she usually handles dinner during the week. I always appreciated that, and I made sure to thank her and help with dishes and groceries. Food has always been a comfort thing for me because I grew up in a household where meals were one of the few stable moments. Megan knew this and used to joke that the way to my heart was through my stomach. A few months ago, things started feeling off between us. Nothing dramatic, but a lot of small tension. She would get irritated easily and make comments about me not noticing things or not listening well enough. I admit I am not perfect, and I can be distracted, but I never thought we were at a breaking point. We argued more, but we also talked and usually made up. The first strange moment happened one night when I came home late and she had already made dinner. As I sat down, I noticed her standing near the counter watching me eat. It felt odd, but I brushed it off. Halfway through the meal, I tasted something strange. Not spoiled exactly, just off. I asked her if she used a different ingredient, and she shrugged and said maybe the sauce brand was different. She seemed uninterested and went back to her phone. Over the next couple of weeks, this happened a few more times. Meals tasted off or bitter in a way I could not place. I even wondered if I was getting sick or losing my sense of taste. Megan seemed almost amused when I mentioned it. She would smirk slightly and say I was being dramatic or picky. That bothered me, but I still did not jump to any conclusions because the idea that someone would mess with your food feels extreme. The moment everything changed happened on a Saturday morning. I woke up early and went into the kitchen to grab water. Megan did not hear me because she had headphones in. I froze when I saw her standing over my plate from the night before, which she was reheating for me because I had planned to eat it for breakfast. I watched her lean over and spit directly onto the food. It was quick and casual, like it was no big deal. I felt my stomach drop. I stood there in shock for a few seconds before she noticed me. When she turned around and saw me, she did not look guilty or scared. She just looked annoyed, like I had caught her doing something mildly embarrassing instead of something disturbing. I asked her what the hell she was doing. My voice was shaking, and I could hear my heart pounding. She sighed and took off her headphones and said it was not a big deal. I asked her how spitting on my food could possibly not be a big deal. She rolled her eyes and said I was making it into something bigger than it was. She said she was mad at me and that it made her feel better. That sentence keeps replaying in my head. I asked her how long she had been doing it. She shrugged and said sometimes when she was annoyed. I asked if she understood how disrespectful and disgusting that was. She told me it was just spit and that couples do worse things and I should calm down. The way she minimized it made me feel crazy, like I was overreacting to something obviously wrong. I did not eat that food, obviously. I ended up leaving the apartment and driving around for hours trying to process what I saw. I felt violated in a way I did not expect. Food is such a basic trust thing. The idea that someone who says they love you would contaminate something you put in your body out of spite is messing with my head. When I came back later that day, we talked again. I tried to explain why this crossed a line for me. She listened, but she did not really apologize. She said sorry in a flat tone, but followed it up by saying she would not have done it if I had not annoyed her. That felt like blame instead of remorse. I asked her if she would ever do it again. She said probably not, but laughed like the question itself was silly. Since then, I cannot bring myself to eat anything she prepares. She noticed and accused me of holding a grudge and being passive-aggressive. I started making my own meals, and she said I was making the apartment feel tense. I told her the tension came from her actions, not my reaction. She said I needed to get over it. I started paying attention to other things and realized this might not be an isolated issue. When she is angry, she often does small petty things like hiding my keys or giving me the silent treatment for days. I used to brush those off as immaturity, but now they feel more intentional. The spitting incident just made everything else look worse in hindsight. I also started wondering about health and safety. I know it sounds dramatic, but I did not consent to that. I did not know what she was putting in my body or when. It made me question how far someone might go if they think it is harmless or justified by anger. The fact that she was so nonchalant is what scares me the most. I talked to my friend Anthony about it, and he was immediately horrified. He told me that was not normal behavior, and that I should seriously reconsider the relationship. Hearing someone else say it helped, but it also made the situation feel more real. I am not just being sensitive. This is actually messed up. Now I am stuck. Part of me wonders if this is something that can be worked through with boundaries and therapy. Another part of me feels like a basic level of trust has been destroyed, and I do not know how to rebuild it. I keep thinking about how long she was doing this without me knowing, and how easily she justified it. I also feel embarrassed. I have not told many people because it feels humiliating to admit I was unknowingly eating food someone spit on. But staying silent makes me feel isolated and confused. I keep replaying that moment in the kitchen and her expression like it was nothing. I am asking for perspective because I honestly do not know what the best way forward is. Is this something that can be forgiven, or is it a sign of deeper disrespect and control issues? Am I overreacting, or is my gut right to tell me this is a serious violation? I never imagined questioning my relationship over something like this, but here I am, wondering if staying would mean accepting behavior that should never be acceptable. Right now, I feel uncomfortable in my own home and wary of someone I used to trust completely. I know relationships are messy and people make mistakes, but I also believe there are lines you do not cross. I just need to know if walking away over this makes sense, or if I am letting shock cloud my judgment. Update. My girlfriend was spitting in my food and acted like it was nothing when I confronted her. I did not expect the situation to escalate the way it did, but once I stopped ignoring my instincts, everything started coming into focus very quickly. After I posted, I spent a few days just observing and keeping my distance. I continued cooking all my own meals and cleaning my own dishes. Megan noticed and became increasingly irritated. She kept making comments about how I was treating her like a criminal in her own home and how insulting it was that I did not trust her anymore. Every time she said that, I felt this strange disconnect because trust was the exact thing she broke, and she still could not seem to acknowledge that. A few nights later, I tried to have a calm, serious conversation with her. I told her I was not trying to punish her, but that what she did made me feel unsafe and disrespected. I told her I needed a real apology and an explanation that did not involve blaming me. She crossed her arms and said she already apologized and that I was dragging it out to make her feel bad. When I asked her again why she thought it was okay to spit in my food, she said she did not think it was that serious and that people online were probably exaggerating to turn me against her. That was the moment I realized she was never going to take responsibility. She genuinely believed her feelings justified her actions. I asked her directly if she understood that messing with someone's food without their knowledge is a huge violation. She laughed and said I was acting like she poisoned me. That laugh is burned into my memory because it felt cruel in a very casual way. After that conversation, I started sleeping with my phone locked and my wallet and keys next to me. I hate admitting that, but I felt on edge in my own apartment. I also started documenting things quietly. I wrote down dates and times of what happened and what she said. I do not know why exactly, but something in me said I should. It felt less like being paranoid and more like protecting myself. Things came to a head when I came home one evening earlier than usual. Megan was in the kitchen again, and this time she jumped when she saw me. There was a plate on the counter that she quickly moved toward the sink. I did not accuse her of anything, but I asked whose food it was. She hesitated and said it was nothing and tried to change the subject. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Even if she was not actively doing anything in that moment, the secrecy alone confirmed I could not trust her. That night, I told her I needed space and that I was thinking about staying with a friend for a while. She completely flipped. She accused me of abandoning her and said I was overreacting because of something stupid she did out of anger. She then said something that honestly scared me. She said if I was willing to throw away our relationship over something that small, then maybe I deserved it. I asked what she meant, and she said maybe I needed consequences too sometimes. Hearing that made my stomach drop. I packed a bag and left that night. I am staying with my friend Anthony now, and the difference in how my body feels is wild. I can breathe. I can eat without thinking. That alone tells me a lot. Megan has been texting nonstop, alternating between apologizing and minimizing, and then getting angry again. One message will say she is sorry and loves me, and the next will say I am weak and easily influenced. I also spoke briefly to a legal advice clinic because I wanted to understand if what she did had any legal implications. I am not planning to press charges, but I needed clarity. The person I spoke to told me that tampering with someone's food without consent can be taken very seriously depending on circumstances and intent. Hearing that made me feel less crazy. This was not just a gross prank. It was a real boundary violation. At this point, I have decided not to go back to the apartment unless it is to get the rest of my things. I told Megan I need an indefinite break and that I am reconsidering the relationship entirely. She did not take it well and accused me of choosing strangers over her. But I am starting to understand that people who hurt you often hate outside perspective because it removes their control. I am still processing a lot of emotions, including embarrassment, anger, and sadness. I loved her, and I thought we were building a future together. But love without respect turns into something ugly very fast. I keep thinking about how easy it was for her to do that to me, and how easily she justified it. I cannot imagine ever feeling safe eating or sleeping next to her again. Right now, I am focused on protecting myself and regaining my sense of normal. I do not know if there will be another update after this or what the final outcome will be. But I do know that walking away felt less scary than staying and constantly wondering what someone might do to me when they are angry. That realization alone tells me I am probably making the right choice even if it hurts. Update. My girlfriend was spitting in my food and acted like it was nothing when I confronted her. This update comes after a few more weeks of distance and a lot of uncomfortable but necessary decisions. After staying with Anthony for a bit, I finally went back to the apartment to get the rest of my things. I told Megan ahead of time and asked that she not be there because I did not want another emotional scene. She agreed at first and then texted me an hour before I arrived saying she would be home anyway because it was her place too. I almost turned around, but I knew dragging this out would only make it worse. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. She smiled and said hi in this overly sweet tone that made my skin crawl. I ignored it and went straight to the bedroom to pack. She followed me and started talking like we were just taking a break over a small argument. She said she had been thinking and that she understood now why I was upset. I asked her what she understood exactly. She said she understood that I was sensitive about food because of my childhood. That was it. No acknowledgement that what she did was wrong on its own. I told her very clearly that we were not just on a break and that I was ending the relationship. I said I did not trust her and that I could not be with someone who retaliates when they are angry and then laughs it off. Her expression changed instantly. She accused me of acting superior and said I was acting like she was some kind of monster. I told her I was not calling her names and that I was just describing her actions and how they affected me. That is when she said something that removed any remaining doubt. She said I was lucky it was just spit and not something worse, because sometimes people snap when they feel ignored. She said it in a half-joking tone, like she was testing the reaction. My stomach dropped. I did not respond. I just kept packing. That sentence alone confirmed that leaving was the right decision. She tried to backtrack and said she did not mean it like that, and that she was just angry, but the damage was done. I finished packing and left without another word. I blocked her number that night. I also changed passwords to my accounts and made sure she did not have access to anything financial. It felt extreme, but it also felt necessary. Since then, I have been staying on my own and slowly getting back to a sense of normal. I have noticed how much lighter I feel not constantly monitoring someone's mood or wondering if anger would turn into something petty or harmful. The embarrassment still pops up sometimes, especially when I think about how long I brushed off small red flags. But I am trying to replace that shame with learning. A mutual friend reached out to me recently and said Megan told people I was unstable and paranoid, and that I broke up with her over a joke. Hearing that stung, but it also confirmed a pattern. She still cannot take responsibility, so she rewrites the story. I did not engage or try to correct it publicly. Anyone who really knows me knows I would not end a serious relationship lightly. I also followed up once more with legal advice just to be sure there was nothing I needed to do to protect myself further. I was told that cutting contact and documenting everything was the right move. I hope it never comes to anything, but knowing I took precautions gives me peace of mind. Looking back now, the spitting was not just about food. It was about control contempt and how someone treats you when they think you will never find out. The nonchalance was the biggest warning sign of all. I am grateful I saw it clearly enough to walk away before it escalated into something worse. This experience changed how I view respect in relationships. Love is not just about affection or history. It is about safety and basic human dignity. If someone can violate that and then tell you to get over it, they are showing you who they are. I am done questioning whether my reaction was too much. If anything, I stayed longer than I should have. I am focusing now on rebuilding trust in myself and enjoying simple things again, like cooking without anxiety and eating without suspicion. I do not know when I will be ready to date again, but I do know I will never ignore that gut feeling again. Walking away was painful, but staying would have cost me something much bigger. Update: my girlfriend was spitting in my food and acted like it was nothing when I confronted her. This is going to be the final update because I've reached a place where I no longer feel pulled back into the chaos, and I do not need to keep revisiting it to understand it. A few months have passed since I left, and the distance has given me clarity that I could not have imagined while I was still living in that apartment and walking on eggshells. After I blocked Megan, I stuck to no contact completely. That was harder than I expected at first, because even unhealthy relationships create habits and routines that your body remembers before your mind catches up. There were moments where I wanted to unblock her just to see what she would say, or to defend myself against the version of the story she was telling others. But every time I felt that urge, I reminded myself that peace does not come from winning an argument with someone who refuses accountability. It comes from removing yourself from the argument entirely. About a month after the breakup, I ran into her unexpectedly at a grocery store. I almost turned around, but she saw me first. She walked over like nothing had happened and started talking about random things. I told her politely but firmly that I was not interested in talking and asked her to give me space. She rolled her eyes and said I was still being dramatic and that she could not believe I was still hung up on something so small. Hearing that confirmed everything for me. Time had passed and she still did not get it. She still minimized what she did and dismissed how it affected me. I walked away and did not look back. I later found out through a mutual acquaintance that she has been telling people I was controlling and paranoid and that I blew up the relationship over nothing. That used to bother me a lot. Now it does not. People who know me know my character, and people who do not were never going to understand anyway. Letting go of the need to correct the narrative was one of the most freeing parts of this process. I also started therapy myself, not because I think something is wrong with me, but because I wanted to understand why I stayed as long as I did and why I questioned my instincts so much. Those sessions have been eye-opening. I learned that I was taught to downplay my own discomfort to keep the peace, and that made me vulnerable to accepting behavior I should never have tolerated. Naming that pattern has helped me break it. Life now is quieter and more stable. I cook my own meals and enjoy them without a second thought. That might sound small, but it is huge to me. I sleep better. I laugh more. I no longer feel that low-level anxiety that used to sit in my chest whenever I came home, wondering what mood someone would be in. Being alone feels safer than being with someone who does not respect you, and that is something I will carry forward. If there is one lesson I want to leave here, it is this. Pay attention to how someone treats you when they are angry and when they think you will never find out. Those moments reveal more than all the affectionate ones combined. Disrespect, disguised as humor or minimization, is still disrespect. You do not need permission or a dramatic reason to walk away from something that makes you feel unsafe or small. I am not bitter anymore. I am not angry all the time. I am just done. I am proud of myself for leaving, even though it was uncomfortable and embarrassing and painful. Staying would have required me to abandon my own sense of dignity, and I am glad I chose not to do that. Stories number 7. My husband ruined the gender surprise, so I pranked him in the delivery room, and now everyone is divided. I never thought I would be the kind of person posting my marriage drama online, but here I am, because I genuinely don't know if I crossed a line or if people are just being dramatic. I'm exhausted, emotional, and running on very little sleep, so I need outside perspective. I'm married to my husband Andrew. We've been together for 7 years, married for 4. Overall, our relationship has been solid. He's funny, social, sometimes impulsive, and usually means well even when he messes up. I'm more of a planner. I like surprises when they're intentional and thoughtful, not when they're accidental or careless. When I got pregnant with our first baby, we agreed we wanted to do a gender surprise at birth. No gender reveal party, no cake, no balloons, just the doctor telling us in the delivery room. This was really important to me. I don't have a lot of things that feel sacred or magical in my life, but this felt like one of them. We told everyone very clearly that we did not want to know the gender ahead of time. That included family, friends, coworkers, everyone. Andrew promised me repeatedly that he didn't want to know either. He even joked about how fun it would be to find out in that moment together. Fast forward to my 3rd trimester. I'm uncomfortable, hormonal, and already feeling like my body isn't fully mine anymore. One afternoon, Andrew comes home acting weird, too cheerful, too attentive. He kept asking if I needed anything and telling me how amazing I was. Normally that would be sweet, but something felt off. That night, I was scrolling on his phone with permission because mine was dead. A message popped up from his friend, Tyler. It said, "Dude, I still can't believe you know," and she doesn't. My stomach dropped. I opened the message thread. Andrew had found out the gender at a doctor's appointment I couldn't attend because of work. He told himself he wouldn't look. He looked anyway. He told Tyler, his brother Mark, and apparently his mom, Susan. They had all known for weeks. I confronted him immediately. He admitted it. He said it was an accident at first, then said he was just curious, then said it wasn't a big deal because the baby would be the same either way. That sentence still makes me angry when I think about it. I cried. I don't mean a few tears. I mean full ugly crying. I told him he took something special away from me. He apologized, but it felt shallow, like he was sorry I was upset, not sorry for what he did. After that, I couldn't let it go. Every time someone smiled a little too knowingly or slipped up with a comment, it felt like I was the only idiot in the room. Everyone else was in on something I wasn't. I didn't yell anymore. I didn't fight. I just got quiet. Andrew noticed and kept asking how to fix it. I told him there was no fixing it, but maybe there was balancing it. This is where the prank comes in. I told the nurses and doctor privately that my husband already knew the gender, and that I wanted to do something harmless but surprising. They were hesitant at first, but once I explained, one of the nurses laughed and said she'd seen worse. When the baby was born, everything went smoothly. Andrew was crying. I was crying. Then the doctor announced the gender. He announced the opposite of what it actually was. Andrew froze. I watched his face go through confusion, panic, and disbelief in about 3 seconds. He looked at me like he had just seen a ghost. He didn't say anything. He just nodded slowly, like he was trying to process a reality that didn't match what he knew. We let it sit for about a minute. Not long, just long enough. Then the nurse corrected it and announced the real gender. I laughed. I was emotional and tired and relieved, and it came out as laughter. Andrew did not laugh. He asked me why I did that. I told him calmly that I wanted to know what it felt like to have a moment taken away and replaced with confusion. I told him this way: at least we both experienced surprise in the room. He didn't yell. He didn't storm out. He went quiet, which for him is worse. Later, after family came in, he acted normal, but I could tell he was embarrassed. His mom pulled me aside and said that what I did was cruel and unnecessary. Tyler texted him saying I was petty. My sister Emily thinks it was kind of iconic. Andrew finally told me he felt humiliated during what was supposed to be one of the best moments of his life. I told him I felt humiliated for weeks, knowing everyone else had something I was denied. Now he says I ruined the memory for him. I feel like he already ruined it for me, and I just took back a little control. We're home now. The baby is healthy. That's what matters most, and I know that. But this tension is still hanging between us. Some people think my prank was harmless. Others think I crossed a serious line, especially given the timing. I keep going back and forth between feeling justified and feeling guilty. I didn't scream. I didn't insult him. I didn't expose him. I surprised him the way he surprised me, just for a moment. So now I'm here, wondering if I was wrong for pranking my husband in the delivery room after he ruined the gender surprise, or if this is just one of those messy marriage moments people judge too harshly from the outside. Update: my husband ruined the gender surprise, so I pranked him in the delivery room, and now everyone is divided. It's been a little while since I wrote my original post, and I needed the distance to sort through what actually mattered versus what just felt loud in the moment. Life with a newborn doesn't exactly leave room for internet drama, but the tension between Andrew and me didn't magically disappear once we got home, so this needed to be addressed whether I wanted to or not. The first week was rough, not because of the baby, surprisingly, but because of the silence. Andrew was present. He helped with feedings, diaper changes, laundry, all of it. He wasn't being cruel or cold, but he was emotionally checked out. Conversation stayed practical. Who's taking the next shift? Did the baby eat? Did I take my meds? It felt like living with a very polite roommate instead of my husband. Eventually, I asked him directly if he was still angry about what happened in the delivery room. He didn't answer right away. He just sat there holding the baby and staring at the wall. Then he said he wasn't angry anymore, but he was hurt in a way he didn't expect. That stung, because that was exactly how I had felt for weeks before giving birth. We finally had the conversation we should have had before any of this escalated. He admitted that finding out the gender made him feel included when I couldn't attend that appointment, and that instead of telling me, he chose the easier path of keeping it to himself. He said once he told Tyler and then Mark, it felt too late to undo it. Hearing that made me angry all over again, but it also clarified something. He didn't do it to hurt me. He did it to avoid discomfort, and that avoidance came at my expense. I told him the prank wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness. I told him I needed him to feel, even briefly, what it was like to have certainty stripped away in a moment that was supposed to be pure. He admitted that when the wrong gender was announced, his first thought wasn't confusion, but panic. He said he felt like reality cracked for a second. That was the moment he finally understood how destabilizing it felt to be the only one left out. That didn't magically make everything okay, but it shifted the tone. The outside opinions didn't help. His mom, Susan, doubled down and told him privately that I was manipulative. She stopped texting me entirely. Mark made a comment at a family dinner about how childbirth hormones make people irrational. I shut that down fast. Andrew actually backed me up, which mattered more than he probably realized. On my side, my sister Emily thought the whole thing was funny until she saw how strained things were between us. She apologized for encouraging it, without thinking about the aftermath. I appreciated that. Tyler eventually apologized too, mostly for inserting himself into something that wasn't his business. Andrew and I started couples counseling, not because our marriage was falling apart, but because neither of us wanted this to become a scar we pretended wasn't there. The counselor didn't focus on the prank at all. She focused on trust, on secrecy, on how small decisions snowball when they aren't addressed early. One thing that surprised me was realizing how much of my anger came from feeling powerless during pregnancy. Everyone touched my stomach. Everyone gave opinions. Everyone knew something I didn't. The prank wasn't just about the gender. It was about reclaiming agency in a process where I felt invisible despite doing the hardest physical work of my life. Andrew owned his mistake more fully than he did at first. He apologized without qualifiers. No, but it wasn't my intention. Just I was wrong. That mattered. Do I regret the prank? Sometimes. Mostly when I think about how intense that moment was and how delicate emotions are during birth. Do I think it makes me a villain? No. I think it makes me human. I think it exposed a crack in our communication that needed to be addressed before it turned into resentment years down the line. Things aren't perfect, but they're better. We're laughing again. We're tired together. The memory of the delivery room isn't ruined for either of us, even if it's complicated. Life rarely gives you clean stories anyway. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that marriage isn't about keeping score, but it is about accountability. Surprises, secrets, and jokes all hit differently when trust is involved. We're still learning. Update 2. My husband ruined the gender surprise, so I pranked him in the delivery room, and now everyone is divided. I didn't expect to come back again, but a few things happened that felt too important to leave unsaid. Mostly because they forced Andrew and me to confront issues that were bigger than the prank, bigger than the gender surprise, and honestly bigger than either of our egos. A couple months have passed. The newborn fog has lifted just enough for real patterns to show. That's the part no one really warns you about. Once the adrenaline is gone, and you're not just surviving on 2-hour stretches of sleep, whatever cracks existed before suddenly become very visible. Andrew and I kept going to counseling. At first, it felt like maintenance. Then it got uncomfortable. The therapist started asking about other moments in our marriage where information was withheld to keep the peace. At first, Andrew said there weren't many. Then he paused. Then he admitted there were more than he realized. Nothing explosive, nothing dramatic, just small things. Decisions made without looping me in because he assumed he knew what I would say. Conversations with his family where he smoothed things over instead of being honest. Moments where he chose silence because it felt easier than potential conflict. That's when it clicked for me why the gender thing hurt so much. It wasn't just about the baby. It was about a pattern of him deciding what I could handle instead of trusting me to be part of the decision. Pregnancy just amplified it because my body was already not fully under my control. Andrew admitted something else during one session that surprised me. He said the prank didn't actually humiliate him the way he initially claimed. What it really did was make him feel exposed. He said he's used to being the one with information, the one who feels steady and prepared. For 1 minute in that delivery room, he felt the same helpless confusion I had been carrying quietly for weeks. He didn't like what that revealed about himself. That conversation changed the tone between us more than anything else. Things with his mom, Susan, are still tense. She eventually reached out, but not with an apology. It was more of a carefully worded message about wanting to move forward and focus on the baby. I agreed to keep things civil, but I set boundaries. No comments about the birth, no jokes, no rewriting the story to make me the villain. Andrew backed me up without hesitation this time, which honestly felt like progress. Mark crossed a line again at a family gathering by saying Andrew should watch out for me because I hold grudges. I didn't even respond. Andrew did. He told his brother that secrecy isn't harmless and that loyalty to your spouse isn't optional. I don't think I've ever felt more seen in our entire relationship. On my side, I had to own my part too. I had been holding on to that prank as a symbol of justice instead of acknowledging that it also scared Andrew during a vulnerable moment. Two things can be true at the same time. He hurt me first. I still chose a method that added stress to an already intense situation. Sitting with that nuance hasn't been easy, but it's been necessary. Parenthood has a way of stripping away performative apologies. There's no room for them at 3 in the morning when you're both exhausted and the baby won't settle. What matters is whether you trust the person next to you not to make unilateral choices that affect you both. Slowly, that trust is rebuilding. Not because we pretend this never happened, but because we talk through things now before they turn into resentment. We over-communicate. We double-check assumptions. It's not romantic. It's practical. And right now, that feels better than romance. Sometimes Andrew jokes that our kid's birth story is going to be very edited when they're older. I told him that's fine, but we don't edit the lesson we learned from it. He agreed. If I could go back, would I do everything the same? Probably not. But I also know that without that moment, without the discomfort, we might have kept drifting, along with the same quiet imbalance until something much bigger broke. We're not perfect. We're tired. We're learning. But we're more honest now than we were before the delivery room, and that's not the worst foundation to build a family on. Final update. My husband ruined the gender surprise, so I pranked him in the delivery room, and now everyone is divided. I think this will actually be the last time I update, because things have finally settled into something that feels real and sustainable, not just temporarily calm. Enough time has passed that this isn't about defending myself or justifying choices anymore. It's about where we landed. Andrew and I are still together, stronger, but not in the movie montage way people like to imagine. Stronger in the quieter sense. The kind where trust isn't assumed, it's practiced. We kept up counseling longer than we originally planned, not because things were bad, but because for the first time, we were actually talking about the stuff we used to gloss over. The biggest shift is that Andrew no longer defaults to protecting himself from discomfort by making decisions alone. That sounds small, but it changes everything. He checks in. He tells me things even when he thinks I won't like them. Sometimes, especially when he thinks I won't like them. I didn't realize how starved I was for that kind of partnership until I finally had it. As for me, I had to confront how much resentment I had been quietly storing long before pregnancy. The prank became a lightning rod for years of swallowing frustration because it felt easier than arguing. I'm not proud of that. I'm also not ashamed of it. I was coping the only way I knew how at the time. We talked about the delivery room moment one last time in therapy and then agreed to let it rest. Not erase it. Just stop reopening it. It's part of our story now. Messy. Human. Uncomfortable. Also survivable. Andrew's relationship with his family changed. And honestly, that might be the most lasting impact. He no longer lets his mom or brother frame me as the emotional one or the difficult one. He doesn't over-explain or joke it away. He shuts it down calmly and moves on. That boundary used to feel impossible for him. Now it feels non-negotiable. Susan eventually softened, not fully, but enough to be respectful. We coexist. I don't expect closeness. I expect civility. That's enough. Our baby is thriving, laughing, growing, completely unaware of the chaos that surrounded their arrival. Watching Andrew with our child erased any lingering doubt I had about whether this marriage was worth fighting for. He's attentive, gentle, present, not perfect, but committed in a way that feels real. Sometimes, late at night, we talk about how close we came to letting one mistake define us. How easy it would have been to turn that moment into a permanent scorecard. I'm glad we didn't. Not because either of us was right or wrong, but because we finally learned how to repair instead of retaliate. If anyone reading this is stuck arguing about who crossed the bigger line, I'll say this. The line matters less than what happens after it's crossed. Accountability matters. Listening matters. Choosing to change matters. I don't regret telling my story, even knowing some people will always think I was wrong. I don't regret staying. And I don't regret learning that marriage isn't about perfect moments. It's about what you do when one of them goes sideways. Stories number 8. My autistic child was excluded from a group activity and I didn't fight, and now I feel guilty. I am still trying to process what happened last week, and I keep going in circles in my head about whether I handled this correctly. I am a 38-year-old mom living in Texas. My son Noah is 10 and autistic. He's nonverbal most of the time and communicates through gestures, pictures, and a few words. He's amazing, sensitive, and incredibly smart in ways that don't always fit the typical classroom environment. My husband Jason is 41. He's supportive and kind, but sometimes struggles with school-related conflicts because he wants to avoid drama. Noah's school recently had a small group activity in his classroom. The teacher, Miss Riley, organized it so kids would be grouped to work on a project together for a presentation. I noticed a note about it a week in advance and saw that Noah was placed in a group with 3 other kids, all of whom tend to be very talkative and active. I worried a little, but hoped he would enjoy it in his own way. On the day of the activity, Noah came home with his tablet unusually quiet. I asked him how it went, and he tapped sad and alone repeatedly. My heart sank. I spoke to Miss Riley the next day to understand what happened. She said the group struggled to include him and decided to have him sit out for a portion of the activity so the other kids could finish faster. She mentioned they gave him an alternative task, but she admitted it wasn't equivalent to the group's work. At that moment, I felt my blood boil. I wanted to storm into the school, demand answers, and lecture everyone about inclusivity. I even considered filing a complaint with the district. But when I looked at Jason, he was calm and said maybe it's worth processing before reacting. He reminded me that Noah was safe, had a quiet activity to engage with, and that Miss Riley seemed apologetic. I didn't fight. I didn't demand a meeting immediately. I emailed Miss Riley to express concern, ask what supports were in place, and suggest strategies for future group work. But I kept it calm and professional. I worried that escalating immediately could backfire or make Noah feel like he caused trouble. Since then, I have been wrestling with guilt. Part of me thinks I failed Noah by not standing up louder, by not insisting that he be included no matter what. Another part tells me that I may have handled it in the only way that didn't make him feel like the problem was him. I keep replaying the scene, imagining yelling at the teacher, calling the principal, writing letters to parents. I feel like maybe I was too passive. Jason says I did the right thing. He pointed out that Noah wasn't hurt physically, he wasn't rejected by peers on purpose, and we can advocate for better inclusion next time. He reminded me that overreacting could make Noah feel embarrassed or anxious in future group situations, but my chest still tightens every time I picture him tapping sad and alone. I also talked to a few other parents who have autistic kids. They all said something similar. Schools struggle to balance group activities, and sometimes the safest and least stressful option is to quietly advocate and plan next steps rather than erupt immediately. Their perspective makes sense, but I can't shake the feeling that I didn't protect him fully in the moment. I have started compiling strategies and social stories for Noah and talking with Miss Riley about training and support during group work. I even suggested a peer buddy system to help him engage. I know this is proactive, but it still doesn't erase the gnawing guilt that I didn't fight hard enough right away. Every time I see Noah light up over small wins, I feel proud, but the memory of that day still lingers. I keep asking myself if calm advocacy is enough, or if there are times when I need to channel anger to ensure my child's needs are respected. I am sharing this because I need perspective. I want to know if I truly failed him by staying calm and professional, or if this is just a parent's natural guilt when they can't fix everything instantly. I love Noah fiercely, and the thought of him feeling excluded again terrifies me. I just do not know if I handled this the way a good parent should have. Update: My autistic child was excluded from a group activity and I didn't fight, and now I feel guilty. It's been about 2 weeks since I first shared what happened, and I feel like I'm finally able to see the situation a little more clearly, though the guilt hasn't completely gone away. After the incident, I kept replaying that moment when Noah tapped sad and alone over and over. Every time I think about it, I feel that same pang of helplessness, even though I try to approach it calmly. After emailing Miss Riley, she replied thoughtfully. She apologized again and asked if I wanted to set up a meeting to discuss how to better support Noah during group work. I agreed, and we scheduled a time last week. During the meeting, I was honest about my concerns, but I stayed composed. I explained that Noah struggles with social communication and sensory overload, and that sometimes what seems like a minor exclusion to staff can feel devastating to him. I also brought a few examples of strategies that have worked in the past, like pairing him with a peer buddy, giving him a predictable structure, and offering clear roles in group tasks. Miss Riley was receptive. She admitted that she underestimated how much being excluded would affect Noah and promised to be more mindful moving forward. She even suggested that she could reach out to the other parents to give a little guidance on how to help include him, which made me feel cautiously hopeful. I realized that this kind of calm, structured advocacy might actually have more long-term impact than yelling or demanding immediate action would have. I've also started meeting with the school's special education coordinator. We are working on a social story for Noah, explaining what group activities look like, how he can ask for help, and what he can do if he feels left out. I never thought I'd spend hours writing a story about something like that, but it's been surprisingly empowering. It feels like I'm giving him tools to navigate situations that might otherwise feel overwhelming. Jason has been a rock through all of this. He reminds me that Noah is safe, cared for, and learning to advocate for himself, even in small ways. He keeps saying that I handled it exactly as I should have, and that sometimes the calm approach allows for lasting change rather than temporary drama. I want to believe him, but it's hard when I picture Noah's little sad face. I've talked to a few other parents with autistic kids, both online and in person, and their feedback has been eye-opening. They said that exclusion happens more often than most parents realize, not always out of malice, but because staff aren't trained or the group dynamics get complicated. Almost every parent told me that taking time to educate, communicate, and strategize is more effective than reacting in anger. Hearing that has helped me feel less like I failed Noah, though I'm still learning to let go of that instinctive panic. Since the meeting, Noah has been more confident in class. He had another group activity, and Miss Riley made sure to use a peer buddy system and a structured plan. He participated and even smiled when he returned home that day. Seeing him engaged and happy reminded me why calm advocacy can matter more than immediate confrontation. It doesn't erase the memory of him feeling excluded, but it shows that our actions now can prevent it from happening again. I'm still struggling with the feeling that maybe I should have been louder or angrier. Part of me wonders if standing up forcefully would have made a stronger statement to the teacher. But then I remind myself that my goal is not to assert dominance or vent frustration. It's to create an environment where Noah can feel included, safe, and respected. I think I'm beginning to understand that effective advocacy often looks quieter than we imagine. Noah has also taught me something about resilience. He recovered quickly from the initial hurt and seems willing to engage again, which is amazing. I see how my response affects him too. If I had escalated aggressively, I worry he might have mirrored that anxiety or felt like he caused trouble. Ultimately, I feel more empowered than I did when I first wrote my post. I know I did not fail Noah. I helped him navigate a difficult situation and put measures in place to prevent it from happening again. I still feel protective and worried, but I'm learning to channel those feelings into planning and supporting rather than panic. I still think about that day sometimes. It's impossible not to. But I'm starting to understand that my calm approach, though it felt weak in the moment, has given Noah a safer, more supportive environment and has shown him that even when things go wrong, we can respond with strategy, empathy, and patience. I feel proud of him. I feel proud of myself for advocating in a way that preserves his dignity. And slowly, I'm letting go of the guilt that had me questioning every instinct I had as a parent. It's still a learning process, but I think we are moving in the right direction. Update 2. My autistic child was excluded from a group activity, and I didn't fight, and now I feel guilty. It's been a few more weeks since my last update, and I think I am finally starting to settle into a place where I can reflect on this without the tight knot of panic and guilt in my chest. There have been challenges, but also small victories that make me feel like we are moving forward in a meaningful way. After the social story and the peer buddy system were implemented, Noah has started participating in more group activities. He still has moments where he feels anxious or overwhelmed, but I see him trying and communicating in his own ways, and that feels like progress. A couple of times, he even initiated interaction with other kids, using his tablet to ask questions or make suggestions during group work. Those moments, though small, are monumental for him and remind me why staying calm and strategic with my advocacy was necessary. I've been keeping in touch with Miss Riley more regularly now. She has been receptive and has started incorporating inclusive strategies for the whole class, not just Noah. She asked for my input on ways to help other students who might struggle socially, and that made me realize this situation created a learning opportunity for her as well. Instead of being reactive and punitive, we're working collaboratively. Jason and I have had more conversations too. At first, he was all about don't make waves, and I was all about I need to protect my kid immediately. Over time, we've met somewhere in the middle. We've started strategizing together for potential future situations, planning how to respond if Noah is excluded again or needs extra support. It feels like we are on the same team, which is reassuring. I've also joined a local parent support group for families with autistic children. Talking to other parents in similar situations has been eye-opening. They've shared stories where they did confront the school in anger and ended up making things more stressful for their kids. Others have shared how calm, persistent advocacy led to lasting changes, and hearing that validates the way I handled it. It also helps me stop second-guessing myself constantly. At home, I've noticed Noah becoming more confident. He's still sensitive, still sometimes retreats when overwhelmed, but he seems to have a little more agency in class. He started telling me when he wants a break or when he feels unsure about a group task. He even tapped happy for the first time when describing a recent group project. That little tap felt huge. It's the first time I felt that he's starting to feel included and capable in ways that weren't there before. There are still moments where I question whether I should have fought harder initially. I still imagine yelling, calling the principal, and demanding immediate change. But when I consider how Noah responded afterward and how the teacher and the school are adapting now, I realized that those explosive reactions might have done more harm than good. Calm advocacy may have been less dramatic, but it seems to have produced better results for him. I've also started a notebook for Noah, not just about strategies for school, but also about documenting what works, what triggers him, and how we communicate effectively with teachers and peers. It's partly a practical tool, partly a way for me to feel like I have some control over situations that otherwise feel unpredictable. This process has helped me release a lot of the anxiety I was holding on to. Even though things are improving, I still think about that day he came home tapping sad and alone. That image sticks with me, but it no longer fills me with guilt or rage. It reminds me of why advocacy matters and why I have to balance emotion with strategy. I've learned that protecting my child doesn't always mean making the loudest noise. It means being consistent, thoughtful, and proactive. Noah's confidence, the teacher's openness, and our collaborative approach as parents have reminded me why patience and planning can be more effective than immediate confrontation. I feel like I am learning alongside him how to advocate, how to guide, and how to let go of some of the anxiety that used to consume me. I still worry, probably always will in some way, but that worry is now constructive instead of paralyzing. I can channel it into preparing Noah for challenges, reinforcing his strengths, and keeping communication open with his teachers. And most importantly, I can watch him grow without letting my own fear overshadow his experience. I finally feel like I did the best I could for him in that moment, and that my calm approach actually helped him more than I could have imagined. I still carry a bit of guilt because being a parent means always questioning yourself, but it no longer rules me. I feel stronger, more focused, and more hopeful for Noah's future than I did when this all started. Update: my autistic child was excluded from a group activity, and I didn't fight, and now I feel guilty. It's been a couple more months since the last update, and I feel like I can finally step back and look at this situation with some perspective. Things with Noah, school, and even myself have shifted in ways I didn't fully anticipate. Noah has been thriving more than I could have hoped. The peer buddy system is working really well. He has a classmate named Ethan who has been paired with him during group projects, and they have developed a routine that Noah seems comfortable with. Ethan is patient, kind, and really intuitive about Noah's needs. I watched them collaborate last week, and Noah actually initiated a suggestion using his tablet, which is huge for him. I felt proud and relieved at the same time. Miss Riley has continued to improve her approach. She started including structured guidelines for group activities that make inclusion easier, not just for Noah, but for other students who struggle socially. She even asked me to join a short training session with a few other parents about supporting neurodiverse kids, which made me realize how far her perspective has come since the initial incident. She is genuinely trying to create an environment where no child feels excluded, and seeing that effort has eased a lot of my lingering frustration. Jason and I have found a rhythm in our co-parenting regarding school advocacy. We talk through situations before taking any steps and try to balance emotion with strategy. He has come to understand why calm, proactive advocacy was the right move in this case, and he now openly acknowledges that my approach helped Noah more than immediate confrontation would have. Our conversations are still full of debate and emotion sometimes, but we've learned to center Noah's needs instead of our own impulses. At home, I noticed Noah's confidence building slowly but steadily. He's more willing to participate in activities that would have made him anxious a few months ago. He still needs breaks and predictable routines, but he's showing signs of feeling more included and capable. Even small gestures, like tapping happy or smiling during group work, feel monumental to me now. It's hard to put into words how much that matters as a parent. I also reflect on my own growth through this process. I realized that my instinct to react immediately with anger or confrontation would have been rooted in fear and guilt, not in what was actually best for Noah. I've learned that calm, consistent advocacy can have a far-reaching impact, even if it doesn't feel as satisfying in the moment. The long-term effects, Noah feeling secure, teachers being educated, and the school improving practices are already showing. I still think about that day he came home sad and alone, and it hits me emotionally, but it no longer consumes me. Instead, it motivates me to continue advocating thoughtfully. I've started documenting successes and challenges in a notebook, which has become a useful reference and a reassurance that we're making progress. It's also helped me separate my anxiety from actionable steps. I spoke with a few other parents recently, and they said they wish they had been more measured in similar situations. Hearing that reinforced that staying calm and thoughtful is not a weakness, it's a strategy. I have also started connecting Noah with a social skills group outside of school, so he can practice interaction in a low-pressure environment with peers who understand him. He seems to enjoy it, and I think it's helping him feel a little more confident socially. The guilt I felt initially has mostly transformed into a sense of responsibility and empowerment. I can still feel protective, but it's no longer paralyzing. Instead of worrying about what I should have done differently in the moment, I focus on proactive solutions, advocating for Noah, educating teachers, supporting his social growth, and making sure he has tools to navigate challenges. I've realized that parenting a neurodiverse child involves constant learning, reflection, and adaptation. I may never get everything right, but the progress I've seen, Noah's increasing confidence, the teacher's improved methods, and my own measured advocacy tells me I'm on the right path. I feel more confident in my decisions and more hopeful for Noah's future than I ever have. Even in moments of doubt, I can now see that protecting my child doesn't always mean reacting loudly or aggressively. Sometimes it means patience, strategy, and consistent support. And seeing Noah thrive in an environment that once excluded him has made every ounce of restraint, every thoughtful conversation, and every bit of planning worth it. I finally feel at peace with how I handled it. I know I did not fail him. I know I acted in his best interest, and watching him navigate challenges with more confidence and joy proves that. I feel proud of him, proud of myself, and more ready than ever to continue advocating in ways that respect his dignity, build his skills, and help him feel included every step of the way. Stories number 9. My family says I am an awful person and possibly racist, and I genuinely don't know anymore. I never thought I would be the kind of person questioning my own morals this hard, but here I am. I am a 34-year-old woman living in North Carolina, and I have always considered myself progressive, open-minded, and respectful. I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, went to diverse schools, and I honestly believed I treated everyone the same. Now half my family won't talk to me, and some friends have hinted that I might be a bad person and even racist, and that word is eating me alive. This situation centers around my younger brother Jason, who is 27. Jason has always been impulsive emotional, and the kind of person who jumps headfirst into things without thinking them through. We lost our dad when Jason was 15, and since then, I have always felt a bit protective of him. Our mom Karen did her best, but she leaned on me a lot to help keep Jason grounded. Because of that, I've probably crossed into a second parent role more than once. About a year ago, Jason started dating a woman named Monique. She is 25, smart, confident, and outspoken. She is also black. That detail is important, but not in the way people think. When Jason first told me about her, I was genuinely happy for him. He has had a string of unhealthy relationships, and Monique seemed put together and driven. I met her a few weeks later, and our first interaction was polite, but awkward. She was friendly, but guarded. I chalked it up to nerves and didn't think much of it. As time went on, I started noticing things that concerned me. Jason began spending money he didn't have. He quit a stable job because Monique encouraged him to follow his passion. He started talking about moving cities even though he had no savings. When I asked him about it, he said Monique believed in living freely and not being tied down. That alone wouldn't be a problem, except Jason has a history of poor financial decisions and anxiety when things fall apart. I invited them both over for dinner one night, hoping to talk casually and get a better feel for their dynamic. During dinner, Monique spoke over Jason constantly. She made jokes at his expense about him being sheltered and naive. Jason laughed, but it felt forced. At one point, she said he needed to stop listening to his family because they were holding him back. That comment hit me hard, but I kept my mouth shut. After they left, I told Jason I was worried. I said I felt like he was changing too fast and giving up stability for someone else's vision. I told him I didn't like how she talked to him sometimes. Jason exploded. He accused me of being controlling and judgmental. Then he dropped the bomb. He said I didn't like Monique because she was black. That accusation stunned me. I told him that wasn't true and that my concerns had nothing to do with her race. He said I wouldn't be acting like this if she were white. I didn't even know how to respond. I asked him why he thought that, and he said Monique felt judged by me from the start and felt I was looking down on her. That hurt because it was never my intention. Things escalated when Jason announced he was moving in with Monique after only 4 months of dating. He asked our mom for money to help with the move. Karen called me panicking because she thought it was a bad idea, but didn't want to push Jason away. I told Karen I agreed it was too fast. Karen then spoke to Jason and told him she was worried. Jason immediately blamed me and said I was turning mom against him. Monique sent me a long message that night. She said I was disrespectful, condescending, and that I had internalized racism I refused to acknowledge. She said I saw her as a stereotype of a manipulative woman dragging my brother down. That message made me physically sick. I reread every interaction I had with her, trying to see myself through her eyes. I couldn't tell if I was blind to my own bias or being unfairly accused. I responded carefully. I apologized if I had made her feel judged and said that was never my intention. I reiterated that my concerns were about Jason's behavior and choices, not her race. She replied saying impact matters more than intent and that I needed to educate myself. After that, she blocked me. From that point on, I was shut out. Jason stopped coming to family events. He told relatives I was toxic. Some family members sided with him immediately. My cousin Brian told me I should just accept Monique and stop being difficult. My Aunt Lisa asked me outright if I had a problem with interracial relationships. That question made me feel like I was on trial. What makes this worse is that Jason's life has started to unravel. He lost another job. He borrowed money from multiple family members. He and Monique broke up briefly and then got back together. During the breakup, he admitted to me that he felt pressured and lost, but when they reconciled, he took it all back and said he was just emotional. I don't know what to believe anymore. Now I'm stuck questioning everything. Did I overstep as a sister? Yes, probably. Did I come across as judgmental? Possibly. Was I motivated by racism? I honestly don't think so, but the fact that multiple people see it that way scares me. I know good intentions don't erase harm. I also know that sometimes people use serious accusations to deflect criticism. I love my brother. I want him safe and stable. I also don't want to be the kind of person who dismisses concerns about bias just because they make me uncomfortable. I've started reading and reflecting, but I also feel like I'm being forced to accept behavior I would question in any partner, regardless of race. At this point, I don't know if I should apologize more, back off completely, or stand my ground and risk losing my brother. I don't know if I am the villain in this story or just someone who spoke up and got burned for it. All I know is that I never imagined trying to protect my brother would leave me questioning my character this deeply. Update: my family says I am an awful person and possibly racist, and I genuinely don't know anymore. I took some time before writing this because the last thing I wanted was to react out of defensiveness or anger. A lot has happened since I first shared my story, and while I still don't have a perfectly clean answer about whether I handled everything right, I do have more clarity about what actually went wrong and what was never really about me in the first place. After I wrote the original post, I decided to do what Monique told me to do, even though it hurt. I started reading. I listened to podcasts and read essays about implicit bias family dynamics and how criticism can feel different depending on who it comes from. I didn't do this to prove anyone wrong. I did it because the idea that I could be harming someone without realizing it terrified me. I won't pretend it was comfortable because it wasn't. There were moments where I cringed thinking back on my tone or my facial expressions or the way concern can come across as judgment, even when you don't mean it that way. At the same time, I also started therapy. Not because anyone told me to, but because I realized I was carrying years of responsibility for Jason that I never fully processed. Losing our dad made me grow up fast, and somewhere along the line, I stopped being just a sister and started being a manager of his life. My therapist didn't excuse everything I said or did, but she did help me see that my fear for Jason often comes out as control. That doesn't mean the fear is invalid, but it does mean my delivery matters more than I ever realized. About a month after my last post, Jason showed up at my door unexpectedly. I hadn't seen him in person in weeks. He looked exhausted, thinner, and emotionally raw. He asked if we could talk. I was cautious, but I let him in. We sat at my kitchen table, and for a while, neither of us said anything. Then he started crying. Full-on crying like he did when we were kids. He told me things had gotten really bad between him and Monique. He said they fought constantly about money expectations and the future. He admitted he felt like he had to prove something by staying in the relationship, especially after telling everyone I was wrong about her. He said he felt embarrassed and trapped. Hearing that broke my heart, but I stayed quiet and listened. Eventually, he told me they had broken up for good. Not dramatically, but quietly. He said she told him he needed to figure out who he was and stop letting his family influence him. He said that part hurt because he realized he didn't know where his own voice ended and everyone else's began. He apologized to me for calling me racist. He said he didn't actually believe I hated her because of her race, but that Monique framed everything that way, and he went along with it because it was easier than admitting he was overwhelmed. That apology was complicated. I appreciated it, but it didn't magically erase the months of stress and self-doubt. I told him I accepted it, but that some things would take time to heal. I also told him that even though I don't believe my concerns came from racism, I still learned that I need to be more mindful about how criticism lands, especially when power dynamics are involved. He nodded and said he understood. Our mom has been trying to pull the family back together, but it's awkward. Some relatives who accused me of being racist never apologized. Others quietly backed off once Jason and Monique split. I noticed how quickly people were willing to label me, but how slowly they were willing to reconsider. That part has been sobering. Jason is staying with a friend now and trying to get back on his feet. I'm supporting him emotionally, but I've made it clear I'm no longer managing his life. That boundary is new for both of us. He's in therapy too, which I think is long overdue. As for how I feel about the racism accusation, now it's complicated but clearer. I don't believe I opposed Monique because she is black. I do believe that my role in Jason's life made my concerns feel heavier and more threatening than I realized. I also believe that Monique used language that made any criticism of her behavior impossible to discuss. Both things can be true at the same time. What I've learned is that self-reflection doesn't require self-destruction. I can acknowledge blind spots without accepting blame for things I didn't do. I can grow without erasing my own intentions or experiences. And I can care deeply about my brother without sacrificing my own sense of reality to keep the peace. I don't know if everyone will ever see me the same way again, and I'm learning to live with that. What matters most to me now is that I acted from concern, not hatred, and that when I was challenged, I didn't shut down. I looked inward and outward, and I'm still doing that work. Update: my family says I am an awful person and possibly racist, and I genuinely don't know anymore. I wasn't sure I would write again, but the last few months have brought changes I didn't expect, and I think this is where the story finally settles into something resembling closure. Not a perfect ending, but a real one. After Jason and Monique officially split, things stayed fragile for a while. Jason was ashamed and withdrawn, and I made a conscious effort not to slip back into fixing mode. That was harder than I thought it would be. Every instinct in me wanted to help him rewrite his resume call in favors and manage his next steps. Instead, I asked him what he needed and respected it when he said space. That alone felt like growth for both of us. What surprised me was how much emotional fallout lingered in the family. Even though the relationship ended, the narrative that I was the problem didn't disappear overnight. At a family gathering, my Aunt Lisa made an offhand comment about how these situations are sensitive when race is involved and looked directly at me when she said it. No one challenged her. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, but this time I didn't argue or apologize. I calmly said that I had done a lot of reflection and that reducing everything to race erased the very real concerns about Jason's well-being. The room went quiet. No one clapped or thanked me, but no one pushed back either. Later that night, my cousin Brian messaged me privately. He said he owed me an apology for jumping to conclusions and that he realized now how easy it is to take the loudest narrative as truth. That apology meant more than I expected. It didn't undo everything, but it reminded me that not everyone was committed to misunderstanding me. Jason and I had another long conversation about a month later. He told me something I think he needed to say out loud. He admitted that framing the conflict as racism protected him from having to confront his own bad decisions. He said it was easier to believe I was prejudiced than to believe he had ignored red flags and hurt people who cared about him. Hearing that was painful, but also oddly freeing. It confirmed what I had quietly suspected, but didn't want to assume. He also told me that Monique wasn't a villain either. He said she had her own unresolved trauma and a deep mistrust of families and authority figures. That didn't excuse everything she said or did, but it added context. I appreciated him being able to hold that nuance because it meant he was finally seeing people as complex instead of symbols in a fight. As for me, I've changed more than I realized. Therapy has helped me understand how tightly I wrapped my identity around being the responsible one. When that role was challenged, I panicked. That panic came out as criticism. I can see now how that might have felt suffocating to Jason and hostile to Monique, even if my intentions weren't malicious. Acknowledging that hasn't made me hate myself. It's made me more careful and more compassionate. I've also learned that being accused of something as serious as racism doesn't automatically mean you are guilty, but it does mean you should pause and listen. At the same time, listening doesn't require accepting every accusation as truth. There is a line between accountability and self-erasure, and I'm finally learning where that line is. Jason is doing better. He has a steady job again in his own place. Our relationship is different now, quieter and more honest. We don't talk every day, and that's okay. When we do talk, it's as siblings, not as parent and child. That shift feels healthier than anything we had before. Some family members still keep their distance. Others act like nothing ever happened. I've stopped chasing resolution from people who are more comfortable with simple villains than messy reality. I know who I am. I know what I believe. I know where I still need to grow. If there is one thing this entire experience taught me, it's that good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes, and accusations don't always tell the full story. Growth lives in the uncomfortable middle, where you question yourself without abandoning yourself. I'm not proud of everything I said or did, but I'm proud that I didn't shut down and I didn't harden. Update: my family says I am an awful person and possibly racist, and I genuinely don't know anymore. I didn't think I would need to write again, but something happened that finally closed the emotional loop for me, and I want to put it out there because this whole experience has been about clarity and honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. A few weeks ago, I ran into Monique unexpectedly. I was at a bookstore on a Saturday morning killing time, and she was there flipping through a shelf a few feet away from me. For a moment, I considered turning around and leaving. My chest tightened, and all the old anxiety rushed back. But she saw me before I could move, and after a brief pause, she said my name. Not angrily, not warmly, just neutrally. We stood there awkwardly for a second, and then she asked if we could talk. I agreed. We went to the coffee shop next door and sat at a small table by the window. I don't know what I expected. A confrontation. An apology. Maybe nothing at all. What I got was something much quieter. Monique told me she had been thinking about everything that happened and that she wanted to clear the air. She said she still believed race played a role in how situations like ours escalate, but she admitted she had projected a lot onto me that wasn't fair. She said when she first met our family, she already felt like she had to defend her place, and that any concern felt like an attack. She said she saw me as a symbol of everything she feared losing Jason to, rather than as an individual person. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she finished, I told her I was sorry for the ways my concern came across as judgment and control. I also told her being labeled racist without room for dialogue deeply affected me and changed how I saw myself for a long time. She nodded and said she understood that now more than she did then. There was no dramatic resolution or hugging, just two people acknowledging harm and misunderstanding. Before we left, she said something that stuck with me. She said sometimes people hurt each other not because one is evil and the other is innocent, but because both are reacting to old wounds at the same time. That doesn't excuse anything, but it explains a lot. I thanked her for saying that. After that conversation, I felt lighter in a way I hadn't expected. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just lighter. I realized I no longer needed everyone to agree with me or fully understand my side. I understood it. I owned my mistakes. I knew my values. That was enough. Jason knows I ran into her. He asked how it went, and I told him the truth. He said he was glad we talked, and that it gave him peace too. Our relationship continues to be steady and respectful. We support each other without suffocating each other. That balance once felt impossible, and now it feels natural. As for the rest of the family, I've stopped waiting for a collective verdict. Some people will always simplify complex situations because it makes them more comfortable. I'm no longer interested in defending myself to people who never bothered to ask questions in the first place. Looking back, I see a version of myself who was terrified of being wrong and equally terrified of being misunderstood. Now, I see someone who can hold both accountability and self-respect at the same time. I can acknowledge bias exists without assuming every conflict is rooted in it. I can accept criticism without dissolving under it. If anyone reading this is stuck in that horrible space where you're questioning your character because of a painful accusation, I want you to know this. Reflection is healthy. Self-hatred is not. Growth doesn't come from surrendering your identity, but from examining it honestly. Stories number 10. My ex hid from me that she had kids, and I ended the relationship. I am still trying to wrap my head around how fast my life flipped, so I am writing this out to see if I am missing something or if my reaction was actually reasonable. I am 34 and I live in Colorado. I work in it for a healthcare company, mostly remote, steady hours, steady income. I am not someone who dates casually, and I am very upfront about what I want. I do not have kids. I am not against kids in general, but I have always been honest that I am not ready to step into a parental role. That has been in my dating profiles, and I have said it out loud on first dates more than once. I met Emily last year through a mutual friend. She was 32, funny, smart, and very easy to talk to. Our first few dates were simple. Coffee, dinner, long walks. She told me she worked in marketing and had recently moved closer to the city for a fresh start. Nothing she said raised red flags. When the topic of kids came up early on, she said she did not have any and was unsure if she wanted them in the future. I remember that clearly because it stuck with me as a green flag. We started dating seriously pretty quickly. She stayed over often, and after a couple of months, she had a toothbrush at my place. I met her friends. She met my sister and her husband. Everything felt normal and stable. Looking back, there were small things I brushed off. She never invited me to her apartment. She always said it was messy or that her roommate worked odd hours. She had weird gaps in availability, especially on weekends. I assumed she had family stuff or work deadlines and did not push. About 6 months in, I started thinking long term. I told her I cared about her and wanted to talk about where things were going. She seemed nervous, but said she wanted the same. That was when I first noticed something was off. She kept saying things like, "We will cross that bridge later," or "Let us just enjoy what we have now." The truth came out in the most surreal way possible. One afternoon, I stopped by a grocery store near my place. I saw Emily in the cereal aisle with 2 kids, a little boy and a little girl. The boy looked about 6. The girl maybe 4. She was holding the girl's hand and arguing gently with the boy about sugary cereal. She looked like a mom. Not a babysitter, a mom. She saw me and froze. I still remember the look on her face. Pure panic. I walked over and asked what was going on. She introduced me to the kids as a friend. That alone felt like a punch to the chest. We stood there awkwardly until she said she would call me later. I left without finishing my shopping because I felt like I was going to throw up. That night, she came over and told me everything. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage. Their names were Lucas and Hannah. She shared custody with her ex, Ryan. She said she did not tell me because she was scared I would leave. She said she wanted me to fall in love with her first so I would be more open to the idea. I felt like the ground disappeared under me. I asked her how she could lie to me for 6 months. She said she never technically lied because she avoided the topic. That answer made me angry in a way I did not expect. Avoiding the truth on purpose felt worse than a direct lie. I told her I had been clear from the beginning about not wanting kids. She said she thought I meant I did not want kids right now. She said she hoped I would change my mind once I got to know her and saw how great her kids were. That conversation went in circles for hours. She cried. She said she felt ashamed and judged. She said single moms never get a fair chance. I empathized with her situation, but I could not get past the manipulation. She took away my ability to make an informed choice about my own life. I told her I needed space. Over the next few days, I replayed everything. All the weekends she was unavailable, all the reasons I never saw her place, all the half-truths. I realized how carefully constructed her story had been. When we talked again, I told her I could not continue the relationship. I said it was not just about the kids, it was about trust. I said I did not consent to becoming emotionally involved under false pretenses. She accused me of abandoning her and punishing her for being a mother. She told me if I really loved her, I would try. That hurt, but it also confirmed something for me. Love built on deception is not love. It is pressure. Her friends started messaging me. One of them told me I was heartless and that plenty of men date women with kids. I never said they do not. I said I did not want that life, and I said it from the start. My sister supported me completely and reminded me that I am allowed to have boundaries. Emily sent one last message saying she hopes I never know what it is like to be judged for something out of your control. I did not respond. Being a parent might not be a choice for her anymore, but lying absolutely was. I feel guilty sometimes, not for leaving, but for how hurt she clearly is. At the same time, I feel relieved. I did not sign up to be a secret boyfriend hidden from children who exist. I did not agree to a future where major parts of someone's life were withheld from me. I am trying to move on, but the situation still weighs on me. I keep wondering if there was a way this could have ended differently, if she had been honest from day one. Maybe I would have walked away sooner. Maybe it would have hurt less for both of us. All I know is that I cannot build a future with someone who decided for me what I should be okay with. I did not leave because she had kids. I left because she took away my right to choose. Update. My ex hid from me that she had kids and I ended the relationship. I did not expect to be writing an update, but things kept unfolding in ways I did not see coming, and I need to get this out of my head. After we broke up, I tried to go no contact. I muted Emily on everything and focused on work. For about a week, it was quiet, and I started to feel like I could finally breathe again. Then the messages started, not from her directly at first, but from people connected to her life. Her ex-husband, Ryan, reached out to me on social media. At first, I thought it was fake or a scam, but it was real. He said Emily told him about me and that he wanted to clear the air. I hesitated, but eventually agreed to talk, because curiosity got the better of me. We met for coffee. That conversation shook me more than I expected. Ryan was calm and polite. He told me he was not there to blame me. He said he just wanted me to understand the situation from his side, because the breakup had created chaos for their kids. He explained that Emily had been dating seriously for a while, but kept running into the same problem. She would hide the kids at first, then reveal them later, and the relationship would fall apart. Hearing that made my stomach drop. It meant what happened with me was not a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. Ryan said he had warned her this would keep happening if she did not change how she approached dating. He also told me something else that reframed a lot for me. He said Emily often struggled with feeling like her identity as a mother overshadowed everything else, so she tried to separate that part of her life until she felt safe. I left that conversation feeling conflicted. I understood her fear more, but I also felt more justified in my decision. Intent does not erase impact. A few days later, Emily reached out directly. She apologized for involving other people and said she was spiraling. She said she realized she should have told me earlier, but was terrified of rejection. She asked if there was any chance we could try again, slowly, with full honesty this time. I told her the truth. I said I appreciated the apology, but I could not rebuild trust after months of deception. I said even if I could somehow adjust to the idea of kids, I could not adjust to the idea that lying was her first coping mechanism. That conversation was calmer than the previous ones, but it still hurt. She told me she felt like I was punishing her for survival choices. That phrase stuck with me, and I have thought about it a lot. I do not think she was surviving. I think she was trying to control the outcome by controlling the information. Things escalated again when one of her friends emailed my workplace. She did not accuse me of anything illegal, but she implied I had emotionally harmed Emily and abandoned a vulnerable woman. My employer handled it professionally and shut it down, but it was humiliating and stressful. That crossed a line for me. I consulted a lawyer briefly, just to understand my options if the harassment continued. The lawyer told me I had done nothing wrong and advised me to document everything and maintain no contact. Hearing that from a professional helped ground me. Since then, things have gone quiet again. I blocked several numbers and accounts. I have not heard from Ryan or Emily in over a week. I hope it stays that way. Emotionally, I am still processing the mix of guilt and relief. I feel bad for the kids, even though I never met them properly. They did nothing wrong. At the same time, I am grateful I found out before things went further. I cannot imagine discovering something like this after marriage or moving in together. This experience forced me to examine my boundaries more closely. I realized that having a boundary does not make you cruel. Enforcing it does not make you heartless. It just makes you honest with yourself. I still believe Emily deserves happiness and a partner who is ready for her full life, kids included. I just was not that person, and I was never given the chance to decide freely. Right now, I am focusing on rebuilding a sense of normal. Work is steady. I have started dating again slowly, with even more transparency than before. If anything, this situation taught me how important it is to align words with reality. I wish things had been different. I wish the truth had come out in a way that did not leave so many people hurt. But I do not regret walking away. Staying would have meant accepting a foundation built on omission, and that is not something I am willing to do. Update 2. My ex hid from me that she had kids, and I ended the relationship. I waited longer to write this because I needed distance, and honestly, because I was hoping nothing else would happen. I was wrong. About 2 weeks after things went quiet, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced. It was a Saturday morning, and I was still in sweatpants, half awake, holding a cup of coffee. When I opened the door and saw her, my first instinct was to close it again, but she started crying immediately, and that froze me in place. She did not have the kids with her. She looked exhausted, thinner, and completely unraveled. She said she just needed to talk and promised she would leave after. Against my better judgment, I let her in, mostly because I did not want a scene in the hallway. She apologized again, but this time it felt different. Less defensive, more desperate. She said the breakup forced her to confront patterns she had been avoiding for years. She admitted she lied because she wanted control. Hearing her say that out loud was surreal because it was exactly what I had been feeling but never heard her acknowledge. She told me she had started therapy. She said her therapist pointed out that hiding the kids was not protecting them or herself, but setting everyone up for pain. She said losing me made her realize she could not keep doing this. Then she asked something that made my chest tighten. She asked if I would consider being friends. I told her no, not angrily, not cruelly, just firmly. I said I needed clean boundaries to move on. I said friendship would keep us emotionally tangled, and that would not be fair to either of us. She cried again, but she did not argue. She nodded and said she understood. Before she left, she said something that stuck with me. She said she wished she had trusted me enough to tell the truth at the beginning, because even if I had walked away, at least she would not have lost herself in the process. I told her I hoped therapy helped her find peace, and I meant it. After that, I thought the chapter was finally closed. For a while, it felt like it was. Then something unexpected happened. Ryan contacted me again, but this time, it was not about Emily. He wanted to apologize. He said after everything that happened, he realized how inappropriate it was for her friends to involve my workplace and for him to insert himself emotionally. He said the kids had sensed the tension for months and that he was now focused on keeping things stable for them. We talked briefly, and then we went our separate ways. That conversation gave me more closure than I expected. It confirmed that stepping away was the right move, not just for me, but for everyone involved. The biggest change since my last update is internal. The guilt I carried has started to fade. I no longer feel like the villain in someone else's story. I see the situation more clearly now. Emily did not lose me because she was a mother. She lost me because she decided what I should be okay with instead of letting me choose. Dating again has been strange, but enlightening. I am more direct than ever. I ask harder questions earlier, and I answer honestly, even when it feels awkward. If something is a deal breaker, I say it out loud and listen carefully to how the other person responds. I also realized something uncomfortable about myself. I ignored small inconsistencies because I liked how things felt. I wanted the relationship to work, so I did not push when my gut told me something was missing. That is on me, and I am learning from it. Emotionally, I feel steadier. I am sleeping better. I am not replaying conversations in my head at 3 a.m. anymore. The anger has cooled into understanding, and the sadness has softened into acceptance. If there is one thing this whole experience taught me, it is that honesty at the beginning is an act of respect, not a risk. People deserve the full picture before they invest their hearts and time. I do not hate Emily. I do not resent her kids. I genuinely hope she finds someone who wants the life she has, not the life she edits to be more palatable. As for me, I am moving forward with clearer boundaries and a stronger sense of self. Final update. My ex hid from me that she had kids and I ended the relationship. I am confident now that this will be the last time I write about this, because enough time has passed for everything to settle into something that finally feels like closure. A few months have gone by since my last update, and life has quietly moved forward. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive, just steady days that feel normal again. That alone has been a reminder of how much emotional noise surrounded me before. Emily and I have had no contact since the last time she came to my apartment. She has respected that boundary, and I genuinely appreciate that. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she is still in therapy and focusing on her kids. I did not seek out that information, but hearing it gave me a sense of relief rather than curiosity. It is no longer my responsibility to track her healing, and that feels healthy. The biggest shift has been internal. For a long time, I kept replaying the moment in the grocery store, wondering if I should have reacted differently or said something more compassionate. I have stopped doing that. I now understand that shock does not require perfection. I reacted honestly, and that honesty mattered. I also spent time reflecting on why this situation affected me so deeply. It was not just a lie. It was the realization that someone I trusted believed they knew what was best for me better than I did. That kind of control, even when wrapped in fear and insecurity, is not something I can accept in a relationship. I did take some practical steps as well. I tightened my privacy settings, documented everything that happened, and made sure there were no loose ends. Nothing further came of the workplace incident, and my employer reassured me that it would not affect my record. That anxiety has finally faded. Dating has continued, slowly and intentionally. I have had a few short connections that did not go anywhere, and one that lasted a bit longer but ended amicably due to mismatched goals. What feels different now is that I am no longer afraid of stating my boundaries early. If anything, this experience taught me that clarity saves everyone time and pain. I have also learned to listen more closely when something feels off, even if I cannot immediately explain why. That does not mean assuming the worst, it just means not ignoring myself to keep the peace. As for the kids, I think about them less now, but when I do, it is with compassion rather than guilt. They were never my responsibility, and I was never positioned to be part of their lives honestly. I hope they grow up with stability and openness, and I hope their mother continues the work she started. If I could rewrite the past, the only thing I would change is insisting on clarity sooner, not to confront, but to protect myself. I no longer see that as cold or selfish. I see it as necessary. I do not regret ending the relationship. I regret that it began without the truth. That distinction matters to me. This situation forced me to grow in ways I did not expect. I am calmer now, more grounded, more confident in my ability to walk away when something violates my core values, even if it hurts.